Orhun ventures deep into a dark stone corridor to test his combat skills. A brown-horned rabbit lunges at him with its fangs bared, but he effortlessly stabs it mid-air with his dagger. He slices another rabbit in half, watching it dissolve into purple smoke and drop a glowing red crystal on the cracked floor. Orhun feels relieved that his swordsmanship has not completely rusted away. He decides it is time to practice his support magic as well. A group of menacing green goblins wielding wooden clubs approaches him. Orhun summons a glowing green magic circle in front of him and casts a spell to increase his strength. He notes that support magic is incredibly versatile because it boosts a target's physical abilities or strengthens their equipment, and a caster can apply it to himself just as easily as his teammates. He fires a blue magic beam from his finger, instantly obliterating the lead goblin into a cloud of smoke. He then draws his sword, which is now enveloped in a glowing green aura, and unleashes a wide horizontal arc of blue magic. The energy wave strikes 3 goblins at once, causing them to erupt into purple smoke. Orhun continues his slaughter, slicing through the remaining monsters with ease. However, he remains acutely aware of his magic's primary weakness. Support magic has a strict time limit depending on the user's innate magic resistance. For Orhun, his strength buff lasts exactly 180 seconds. He keeps a close eye on an internal digital timer ticking down in his mind. The moment the timer hits exactly 3 minutes, the buff expires. Without missing a beat, Orhun instantly reactivates the green magic circle and casts the strength spell again while mid-swing. He acknowledges that most enchanters struggle to recast spells while actively fighting in close combat, but he has trained himself to do both simultaneously. After wiping out the last goblin, Orhun lowers his sword and reflects on the bitter events that led him to this solo training session. Just yesterday, his life was completely turned upside down. His childhood friends and longtime comrades from the Elite Heroes party called him into a study room. Oliver, the party leader dressed in silverplate armor, delivered the crushing news that Orhun was being kicked out of the group. Another party member named Derek, wearing red and white armor, bluntly told Orhun that he simply was not strong enough to keep up with them anymore. The Heroes Party had achieved S-rank status in just a few years and conquered the deepest floors of the Southern Great Dungeon, but they recently realized they were lacking proper support. During a massive joint raid the previous month, they saw how incredibly powerful the enchanters from other S-rank parties were. Compared to them, Orhun's support magic seemed pitifully weak. Orhun desperately tried to defend himself. He reminded his friends that he was originally a swordsman. He only converted to the enchanter class because Oliver was better with a blade, and the party desperately needed someone to handle support magic. Orhun even went out of his way to invent his own original magic spells to compensate for his lack of natural enchanting talent, which kept them all alive in the deepest dungeon floors. Oliver ignored his pleas and coldly revealed that they had already found a much better replacement enchanter. Annalie, the party's witch, chimed in with her own insults. She claimed that Orhun's abilities in both sword fighting and magic were only average, making him a useless jack of all trades. She also complained that his bossy attitude constantly annoyed the rest of the group. Realizing that his childhood friends had completely turned their backs on him, Orhun accepted his fate. He thanked them for the past 8 years and walked out the door. Back in the present, Orhun stands in the dark dungeon corridor and vows to become a solo adventurer who is flawless at everything. He plans to perfect his unique hybrid style of swordsmanship and enchanting so that nobody will ever insult him by calling him a jack of all trades again. Orhun approaches a large glowing blue teleportation crystal and registers his progress so he can start from the 7th floor next time. He decides to call it a day and begins walking toward the exit. Suddenly, a panicked group of 4 adventurers sprints past him down the stone hallway. Orhun overhears them arguing loudly about their recent battle. They were overwhelmed by a massive horde of orcs and decided to flee. A blonde boy in the group is extremely distressed because they left a newly recruited girl behind to die. The party leader, a woman in a brown cloak, fiercely defends her decision. She claims there were too many enemies, and she had to prioritize the lives of her veteran friends over a rookie who just joined them today. Orhun initially decides to ignore them and keep walking. He knows firsthand how deeply it hurts when a party abandons you, but he figures it is not his problem. However, as the woman continues to make selfish excuses for leaving the girl to die, Orhun's anger boils over. He steps in front of the group and blocks their path. The cowardly adventurers tell him to back off, claiming they could not have saved the girl even if they stayed. Orhun violently grabs one of the men by the sleeve and throws him forcefully to the stone floor. He sternly orders the group to stop making pathetic excuses and demands to know the exact location where they abandoned their teammate. Meanwhile, deep in a dark, stone-walled tunnel, a young girl named Sophia Claudel is fighting for her life. Sophia has pinkish-red hair tied in twin tails and wears a dark school uniform adorned with a red gem. She cowers against a stone wall, crying in absolute terror as a massive horde of muscular, gray-skinned demons and dark-furred werewolves slowly surround her. The monsters wield crude, wooden clubs tipped with jagged stone shards and glare at her with glowing red eyes. Sophia desperately tries to fight back. She conjures a glowing green hexagonal magic circle and blasts the advancing demons with surges of magical energy and lightning. Her spells manage to knock a few of the monsters back, but the sheer number of enemies is completely overwhelming. Exhausted and terrified, tears stream down Sophia's face as she screams for someone to save her. Just as the monsters prepare to crush her, Orhun suddenly drops down from the ceiling and lands directly in front of her. He draws his sword and unleashes a blinding flurry of rapid white energy slashes. He completely massacres the front line of demons in a matter of seconds. Orhun steps protectively in front of Sophia and stares down the rest of the horde. He immediately casts his strength-enhancing magic. A green magic circle envelops him, and his sword blade begins to glow with a vibrant green light. He charges directly into the pack of dark-furred werewolves. He spins, kicks, and slashes with incredible speed, turning monster after monster into a cloud of purple dust. A giant werewolf raises its massive wooden club to crush him, but Orhun casually blocks the heavy strike with his sword. He then casts another spell to drastically increase his blade's sharpness. With one swift motion, he slices completely through the monster's thick stone club and cuts the beast in half. Sophia watches the entire battle in absolute awe from the background. She holds her hands to her chest, completely amazed by Orhun's overwhelming strength. She wonders if he is a master swordsman or a high-level enchanter because she has never seen anyone fight with such an incredible combination of skills. Within moments, Orhun slaughters the entire horde, leaving the corridor completely empty except for a scattering of glowing red crystals. He calmly sheathes his sword and looks back to ask Sophia if she is okay. Overcome with immense relief, Sophia slumps against the stone wall and cries tears of joy. Orhun escorts her safely out of the dungeon. They emerge onto a misty dirt path surrounded by lush green trees just as the sun begins to set. Orhun tries to walk away and continue his journey, but Sophia frantically stops him. She bows deeply and formally introduces herself as a member of the Night Sky Silver Rabbits Guild. Orhun immediately recognizes the golden crescent moon and rabbit crest on her uniform. The Silver Rabbits are one of the most popular and powerful clans in the entire kingdom. Sophia blushes brightly and begs Orhun to let her treat him to dinner as a token of her gratitude. Orhun gets heavily flustered and insists that he did not save her to get a reward. However, Sophia looks up at him with such a pleading expression that he eventually caves in and agrees to go with her. Later that night, Sophia excitedly leads Orhun to a large timber-framed tavern decorated with the Silver Rabbit's emblem. Orhun realizes that the restaurant is entirely owned and operated by her guild. As soon as they step inside the bustling wooden dining hall, Sophia runs over to a long table where a red-haired woman is eating her meal. The woman is Selma Claudel, Sophia's older sister. Orhun instantly recognizes Selma. She is the leader of the Silver Rabbit's top S-rank party and is widely known as the most powerful enchanter on the entire continent. Selma is actually a legendary figure among adventurers because she invented the modern combat strategy of splitting a party into dedicated attackers, defenders, and supporters. Her revolutionary tactics changed how everyone explores dungeons. Ironically, Selma's massive success is the exact reason Orhun was forced to become an enchanter for the hero's party, which ultimately led to his banishment. Selma looks up from her meal and glares fiercely at Orhun. She immediately assumes that this strange older man is trying to date her 14-year-old sister. Selma's magical aura flares up aggressively, and she angrily threatens Orhun for preying on a child. Orhun frantically waves his hands and insists his intentions are completely pure. Sophia quickly jumps between them and yells at her sister to stop being rude to the man who just saved her life. Selma is stunned by this revelation. She realizes that Sophia secretly went into the dungeon completely alone without telling anyone in the clan. Selma heavily scolds her sister for being so reckless, especially right before their clan's major expedition. However, her anger subsides, and she sincerely thanks Orhun for protecting Sophia. Selma invites Orhun to sit at their table and offers him a drink. It turns out that Orhun and Selma are not complete strangers. They actually met and worked closely together during the massive joint raid last month. Selma was the lead enchanter for the entire raid, and Orhun acted as her primary assistant. Selma was incredibly impressed by Orhun's enchanting skills and his ability to coordinate support magic perfectly. Selma asks why a famous member of the hero's party is wandering around alone. Orhun sadly admits that he left his party yesterday. Hearing this, Selma immediately sees a golden opportunity. She asks Orhun to join the Silver Rabbits on a massive teaching expedition starting the very next morning. She explains that a group of veteran adventurers needs to escort a batch of new recruits down to the 50th floor of the Southern Great Dungeon. The veterans will defeat the dangerous floor bosses so the rookies can safely register at the deeper teleportation crystals and level up fast. Orhun points out that completing 50 floors in just 3 days is a completely insane and incredibly dangerous schedule for beginners. He correctly deduces that the clan's wealthy sponsors are forcing them to undertake this risky mission to boost the guild's overall strength. Selma is impressed by his sharp intuition and confirms that they are indeed in a very tough situation. She genuinely respects Orhun's abilities and desperately needs his help to keep the recruits alive. Sophia grabs Orhun's hands across the table and begs him to come along. Orhun blushes heavily, feeling truly touched that someone finally respects his skills after his old party discarded him like trash. He agrees to join the expedition, but he sets one unbreakable condition. He firmly tells Selma that he has officially converted back to being a swordsman, and he will only participate in the mission as a frontline fighter, not as a support enchanter. Selma is surprised that he would abandon his top-tier enchanting skills, but she agrees to his terms. She secretly assumes that if things get too dangerous in the dungeon, he will naturally switch back to his main job as an enchanter anyway. She tells him to meet them at the guild headquarters first thing in the morning. Later that night, Orhun stops by a local potion shop run by an elderly man with a long white beard. The shop is filled with shelves of colorful glass flasks and weapons. The old man serves Orhun a cup of coffee and warmly thanks him. He explains that back when Orhun was a top-ranked hero, he constantly recommended the shop to other adventurers, which brought in a ton of business. Orhun looks down sadly and admits that he was kicked out of the hero's party. He apologizes, saying he can no longer help advertise the store because nobody cares about the opinion of a banished jack-of-all-trades. The old man smiles kindly and tells Orhun that he is being ridiculous. He praises Orhun for always working hard and maintaining a good heart. The old man assures him that his heroic title never mattered. He guarantees that Orhun will continue to hear the words "thank you" from countless people because the world will always need someone as dependable and kind as him. He encourages Orhun to stop worrying about the past, live for himself, and keep helping those in need. Orhun is deeply moved by the old man's unwavering support. He thanks his old friend and leaves the shop with a renewed sense of purpose. The next morning, Orhun arrives at the Silver Rabbits headquarters. Selma greets him at the entrance and notes that he looks significantly happier and livelier than he did yesterday. Orhun smiles warmly and agrees, feeling completely relieved to finally be free from his toxic old party. He readies his sword, fully prepared to embrace his new life and prove his worth on the upcoming expedition. Following his agreement with Selma, Orhun heads to the Silver Rabbits headquarters and meets with the clan's leader, Vince Briars. Vince welcomes him warmly and immediately cuts to the chase to confirm the details of the upcoming teaching expedition. He explains that the goal is to escort the rookie adventurers from the first floor all the way down to the 51st floor of the Great Dungeon within a strict 3-day time frame. To break it down, they plan to reach floor 21 on the first day, floor 36 on the second day, and finally hit floor 51 on the third. Vince then shifts the conversation to Orhun's recent departure from the hero's party, stating that it is a massive loss for them. He praises Orhun's skills, noting that while his support magic might have slightly lower base effects than average, his casting speed is absolutely incredible, easily 4 times faster than Vince's own. On top of that, Orhun uses multiple original spells, and has a flawless ability to read the battlefield, predict enemy movements, and deploy support magic at the exact right moment. Vince believes that without Orhun, the hero's party will become significantly weaker, which opens up a perfect opportunity for the Silver Rabbits to reclaim their spot at the top of the rankings. Selma chimes in, agreeing that truly powerful enchanters like Orhun rarely get the credit they deserve because they don't stand out like frontline fighters do. Orhun then asks for more details about the expedition structure. Selma explains that there will be 10 parties of rookies handling the monster encounters on a rotation, while a group of 5 veteran escorts, including herself and Orhun, will step in if any dangerous anomalies occur. Orhun quickly points out a major flaw in this plan, noting that if they are pushing such an insane pace, they should ideally bring multiple high-ranking parties to minimize the risk to the beginners. Selma tries to brush it off by claiming that a little extra stress will help the rookies grow faster, but Orhun sees right through her excuse. He figures out that the clan has a hidden, desperate reason for needing to clear floor 51 so quickly, but he also knows they aren't going to share their internal clan secrets with an outsider. Deciding not to pry any further, Orhun formally accepts the job. Vince thanks him and offers a generous payment of 2 gold coins up front, promising an additional 10 gold coins upon the mission's successful completion. Orhun accepts the offer, acknowledging that the reward is equivalent to an entire year's worth of living expenses and shows just how highly they value his participation. The next morning, Orhun arrives at the entrance of the Great Dungeon, a massive cave opening surrounded by towering rock formation. He soon spots Selma and Sophia approaching him. Sophia is wearing the clan's official rookie uniform, and Orhun politely compliments her outfit, causing her to blush deeply and thank him. Selma immediately jumps in and teases Orhun, asking if he knows how to flatter ladies because he has a girlfriend. Orhun gets slightly flustered and denies it, explaining that since he lived in the same mansion as the female members of the hero's party for years, he simply got used to talking to women naturally. Hearing this, Selma asks where he is currently living now that he has been kicked out. Orhun tells them he is staying at a local inn until he can find a permanent place. Sophia asks about his living situation with too much enthusiasm, prompting Selma to panic and scold her sister for seemingly wanting to visit an older man's inn room. Orhun awkwardly laughs off the misunderstanding. Selma then points out that Orhun is standing quite far away from the rest of the group. He explains that, as an outsider, he doesn't want to make the rookies nervous before their big descent. Selma decides to use his presence to loosen the recruits up and tells Sophia to go join her assigned party. Once Sophia leaves, Selma introduces Orhun to the other 3 veteran escorts who will be joining them. He meets Anthem and Bernard, who are both heavy defenders, and Kathy, who serves as the group's healer. With Selma acting as the main enchanter, Orhun introduces himself strictly as a frontline attacker. He secretly finds the party composition a bit strange, wondering who would have filled the attacker role if he hadn't shown up. Unbeknownst to Orhun, Vince and Selma had a private discussion about this exact issue. Vince was initially hesitant to let Orhun participate as a swordsman since his true value lies in his top-tier enchanting abilities, but Selma convinced him to allow it. She explained that the Silver Rabbits have been completely stuck in their progression since last year and desperately need this expedition to succeed so they can reclaim what they lost. She hopes that Orhun's sheer combat experience will be enough to carry them through as an attacker. Back outside the dungeon, Selma gathers all the rookies together to give an encouraging speech. Seeing how tense the beginners are about heading into the middle levels so soon, Selma loudly announces that they have a special, incredibly powerful helper joining them today. She introduces Orhun to the crowd and reveals that he has successfully reached floor 94 of the Great Dungeon, a depth that even the Silver Rabbits have never seen. She then drops the massive detail that Orhun is a former member of the legendary Heroes Party. The rookies immediately erupt into excited cheers, completely awestruck by the idea of having a literal hero escorting them. Orhun stands awkwardly to the side, sweating nervously as he realizes Selma completely overplayed his reputation. He only wanted the hero title to help advertise the old man's potion shop, and he heavily dreads the possibility of this sudden fame coming back to bite him later. Selma ignores his complaints and officially assigns him to escort Group 10, which consists of the clan's absolute best and most promising rookies. She tells Orhun that if he can teach them how to work together as a proper team, they will easily survive the middle floors. Orhun approaches his new squad and finds a 3-member party, which he immediately notes is incredibly small and dangerous for beginners. The group consists of a cocky blonde boy named Logan Hayward, a highly energetic pink-haired girl named Caroline Inglot, and Sophia. Logan proudly introduces himself as the party's leader and lead enchanter, boldly declaring that he is a genius who will soon surpass Selma herself. Orhun notes his massive ego and worries about his future. Next, Caroline introduces herself as a defender, but Orhun immediately points out that she isn't wearing any armor or carrying a shield. Caroline proudly explains that she is a dodge-type defender who refuses to let monsters touch her, choosing to rely entirely on her speed to get close and kill them quickly. Orhun knows that being a dodge type requires a massive amount of real combat experience, and he realizes Caroline completely ignored all advice from her teachers. Finally, Sophia introduces herself normally as a rear-line magic attacker, and Orhun feels a wave of relief at dealing with someone sensible. However, Logan and Caroline immediately start bickering loudly over leadership and tactics, confirming Orhun's fear that he has been strapped with a bunch of highly talented but completely uncooperative problem children. The massive group finally begins their descent into the dark, rocky caverns of the Great Dungeon. As they walk through the dimly lit tunnels, Caroline relentlessly pesters Orhun, demanding to know why he left the famous hero's party. Orhun tries to ignore her, telling her it is absolutely none of her business. Undeterred, Caroline turns to Sophia and excitedly asks if Orhun is the amazing hero who saved her life yesterday. Sophia blushes and confirms it, adding that he was incredibly strong. Orhun realizes that Caroline isn't actually trying to annoy him, she simply brought up his heroic reputation to help calm Sophia's nerves about entering the dungeon. He silently praises Caroline for being much more considerate of her teammates than she appears. Suddenly, a pack of large white wolves with glowing yellow eyes ambushes the group from the shadows. Instead of drawing his sword immediately, Orhun effortlessly dodges their lunges and leads the wolves right into a series of invisible magical traps he previously set on the cavern floor. Translucent crystal pillars instantly shoot up from the ground, impaling the wolves and turning them into purple smoke. Orhun prefers using trap spells to deal with monsters trying to flank them from the rear because it efficiently eliminates threats without slowing down the group's fast-paced marching schedule. As they venture deeper, Orhun carefully observes Group 10's fighting dynamics. He notes that Logan actually possesses incredible skill as an enchanter, easily performing at the level of an advanced adventurer, but he loses points for barking terrible orders at his teammates. Caroline proves to be astonishingly fast, fulfilling her role as a dodge defender, but she recklessly charges headfirst into danger and her twin daggers simply lack the destructive power needed to quickly finish off tougher enemies. Sophia fights a bit passively from the backline, but Orhun sees that she has solid fundamentals and will likely improve rapidly once she learns to trust her party. The group soon reaches the 20th floor and confronts the floor boss, a massive green orc-like monster wearing a skull necklace. The combined forces of the escorts and rookies easily overwhelm the beast, and it collapses into dust. Selma congratulates everyone on a successful first day and orders them to register their progress at the floor 21 teleportation crystal. After exiting the dungeon, the group walks back to town under a beautiful sunset sky. Orhun and Selma chat about the day's progress. Orhun reports that Group 10 has a massive amount of potential but severely lacks teamwork, specifically pointing out Caroline's reckless behavior. Selma sighs and hints that Caroline has actually improved a lot compared to how she used to act, leaving Orhun curious about the girl's troubled past. They part ways for the night. The following morning, Orhun wakes up in his sunlit inn room and makes a devastating discovery. He picks up the daily newspaper and finds a massive front-page article completely detailing his banishment from the hero's party and announcing the arrival of their brand new enchanter. Orhun stares at the paper in shock and frustration, realizing that his humiliating exile is now public knowledge across the entire kingdom. He knows that his former teammates have absolutely no idea how much this public betrayal hurts him. He worries that if the rookies read the article, their high opinion of him will instantly shatter, making it much harder to lead them. Deciding there is no point in agonizing over things he cannot control, Orhun puts on his dark jacket and heads out into the bustling town streets to meet up with the Silver Rabbits for their second day of exploration. As he walks through a stone archway leading into the town square, Orhun suddenly hears someone call his name. He turns around and is completely shocked to see Luna, the blue-haired girl from the hero's party. Luna was away on a personal errand when Oliver and the others kicked Orhun out, meaning she had no part in his banishment. Orhun remembers that even when the rest of the party grew cold and distant over the years, Luna always treated him with the same warmth and kindness. Luna rushes up to him, clasps her hands together, and desperately begs Orhun to come back to the party, insisting that they truly need his strength. Orhun remains completely calm and asks if the rest of the party actually wants him back, pointing out that the newspaper article proves they have already moved on. Luna admits she hasn't seen the morning paper and clarifies that she is asking him to return entirely on her own, promising to somehow persuade the others to accept him again if he just comes with her. Orhun looks at her with a sad but firm expression and explains that it is far too late for him to return. He reveals that the newspaper article makes his exile permanent, and more importantly, he has absolutely no desire to go back to a group that discarded him. Luna desperately grabs his hands and reminds him of the childhood promise the three of them made years ago to clear the Great Dungeon together. Orhun pulls his hands away and coldly reminds her that Oliver, the very person they made that promise with, is the exact same man who mercilessly kicked him out of the party. He apologizes to Luna and walks away through the archway, leaving her standing alone in the shadows. As Orhun walks down the dusty street, he thinks back to his happy childhood memories with Luna and Oliver, acknowledging that he truly wanted things to stay the way they were. However, he accepts the harsh reality that his place in the hero's party is permanently gone, and he resolves to move forward and focus entirely on his new path. Orhun walks along the stony path toward the dungeon meeting point, his mind still heavy with the news from the morning paper. The article clearly stated that he was banished from the hero's party because he was too weak, and he wonders how many people will actually still trust him after reading such a public humiliation. As he approaches the gathering of students, he overhears them already gossiping about the newspaper. Logan points out the massive discrepancy between Orhun claiming he left the party voluntarily and the article stating he was kicked out. When Orhun greets them, Selma rushes over in an absolute panic, bowing deeply and apologizing profusely for hyping him up so much the day before. She realizes that her bragging on his behalf is what made this sudden revelation so incredibly awkward for everyone. Orhun calmly tells her not to apologize, taking the blame himself by admitting he should have been much clearer about his situation from the start. He reassures Selma and the other escorts that he will still fully back them up during the dungeon delve, telling them to hold their heads high. Caroline and Logan chime in, stating they aren't worried at all because Orhun still made it to floor 94, which is an incredible feat regardless of what the paper says. Orhun smiles and tells them to leave everything to him. He then addresses the recruits directly, deciding to be completely honest. He tells them that the article is mostly true and confirms that he was indeed too weak, meaning he is not the grand hero everyone expects him to be. Logan is completely shocked by this blunt confession, feeling like an idiot for getting so excited the day prior. However, Sophia quickly steps up to passionately defend Orhun, reminding everyone that he effortlessly defeated over a dozen orcs in an instant during their previous encounter. Touched by her unwavering support, Orhun thanks her and formally swears that even though he is no longer a hero, he will act as just an explorer named Orhun Dura and completely protect them all. He encourages them to do their best on the dive, and Caroline aggressively cheers in agreement, fully pumped up for the adventure. The group then officially begins their descent, planning to clear from floor 21 down to floor 35 for the day. Orhun informs them that the veteran escorts won't be giving any direct instructions until they reach the middle floors starting at floor 31, so the new recruits will have to take the lead just like they did yesterday. Over the next several floors, Orhun watches closely as Caroline fiercely lunges at club-wielding frog monsters with her daggers and Sophia successfully blasts wolf-like beasts with her magic staff. He frequently praises their efforts, feeling a deep sense of relief and satisfaction that they still fully believe in him despite the newspaper scandal. Eventually, they reach the 31st floor, and Orhun instantly shifts his demeanor, announcing that he will now be taking charge and issuing all the orders. He quickly senses a group of monsters ahead and commands Caroline to run forward to draw their attention. Caroline enthusiastically agrees and charges ahead to lure out a pack of green goblins and a massive, muscular, furry beast. Orhun then orders Sophia to take out the orcs in the back and tells Logan to apply his support magic to the team. Logan immediately casts agility up, technical up, and magic up on his teammates, but he secretly feels frustrated. He thinks Orhun's orders are incredibly basic and standard, leading him to believe that Orhun might really be nothing special after all. As the massive furry beast roars and prepares to attack, Logan assumes that Caroline can handle herself, but he notices that Sophia is completely frozen in fear, likely traumatized from her previous encounter with orcs. Believing that Orhun has no intention of helping her, Logan decides he will have to step in and save her himself. However, before he can act, Orhun secretly extends his hand and casts a highly complex purple magic circle, applying a powerful agility down debuff directly onto the monstrous beast. The massive creature lunges at Orhun, but he stands perfectly calm and tells Sophia that she is absolutely fine because she is no longer fighting alone. He encourages her to stay calm and just give it her best shot. Inspired by his words, Sophia gathers her courage, holds out her staff, and casts Fire Javelin. A massive, swirling vortex of bright orange flames erupts from her staff and strikes the beast directly in the chest, completely obliterating it in a blinding explosion. When the smoke clears, Orhun is genuinely shocked, admitting he had absolutely no idea she could use such advanced magic. Caroline leaps into the air and cheers wildly, and Orhun warmly praises both of them for an excellent attack. Logan watches the celebration with complete bewilderment, struggling to comprehend how Orhun easily cast a complex debuff on the monster and guided Sophia to use advanced magic. The group pushes deeper into the cavern and eventually reaches floor 35, where they are suddenly confronted by a giant purple death tarantula. Logan immediately panics, screaming that they aren't strong enough to fight such a massive creature. Unfazed, Orhun begins issuing rapid orders, telling Logan to cast Agility Up and Durable Up on Caroline and to refresh Sophia's Magic Up. Logan is annoyed, screaming that these are the exact same basic orders as always, but he complies. Caroline recklessly charges forward with her daggers, prompting Logan to yell that she will be at a massive disadvantage attacking from the front. Orhun calmly corrects her approach, instructing Caroline to jump over the spider and slash directly at its back. Caroline follows the order perfectly, leaping onto the spider and stabbing it, drawing its full attention. Orhun then orders Logan to purely focus on supporting Caroline's mobility and tells Sophia to pin the monster down. Sophia immediately casts Arrow Cutter, launching several sharp green wind blades that violently slice into the spider. The monster screeches in agony and completely vanishes into a thick cloud of dark smoke. Caroline cheers, assuming they have already won, but Orhun urgently yells that the fight is not over. He commands Logan to immediately cast Strength Up and Technical Up on Caroline. Before anyone can react, the spider reappears from the smoke and shoots a massive stream of thick white webs, completely cocooning Caroline and trapping her. Logan watches in horror, wondering if Orhun gave those specific orders because he predicted this exact trap. Orhun commands Caroline to use her newly boosted strength to cut through the webs with her daggers. Logan panics because he realizes his current magical limit only allows him to maintain 3 spells at once, meaning he cannot buff her any further. Anticipating this, Orhun steps in and casts his own Sharpness Up spell directly onto Caroline's blades. Surrounded by swirling energy, Caroline effortlessly slices through the thick webs and breaks free with a triumphant shout. With Caroline safe, Orhun orders Sophia to prepare a Rock Arrow spell while Logan refreshes her magic buff. Sophia summons a massive glowing golden magic circle, causing giant pointed boulders to detach from the cavern ceiling and rain down on the spider. The falling rocks completely crush the giant tarantula, reducing it to dust, while Orhun and Sophia shield themselves from the falling debris using a golden magic barrier. The girls excitedly cheer over their massive victory, and Orhun turns to specifically praise Logan, telling the boy that his impeccable support magic is the only reason their strategy worked. Logan is completely taken aback by the genuine compliment, opening his eyes wide and sincerely thanking Orhun. With the floor cleared, Orhun announces that it is time to head back to the surface. Later that evening, the group exits the dungeon as the sun sets. Selma gathers everyone and congratulates them on a successful run, firmly telling them to get plenty of rest so they will be fully prepared for their final day of the expedition tomorrow. Once the group is dismissed, Logan and another veteran escort approach Orhun and invite him to join them for dinner at a local tavern. Orhun gladly accepts the offer, happy that they don't seem bothered by his ruined reputation. At the tavern, they order a massive feast, and Logan tells Orhun to eat whatever he wants since they are paying. Logan tries to make small talk, assuming Orhun must have partied a lot while in the hero's party. Orhun politely corrects him, explaining that he handled all the errands and busy work, leaving him with almost no free time to have fun. His companions express genuine sympathy, noting that his hard work makes the cruel newspaper article even more unjustified. Orhun smiles, truly happy just to hear them say that. Meanwhile, in a separate conversation earlier that day, Logan talks privately with Caroline and Sophia about Orhun's fighting style. Logan asks the girls to describe exactly how Orhun saved Sophia a few days prior. Sophia explains that Orhun used an incredible wind blast and then powered up his sword with a sharpness buff. Caroline enthusiastically chimes in, noting that Orhun used that exact same sharpness buff on her daggers during the spider fight today. This completely confuses Logan, because Orhun had previously told him that he converted to being a frontline attacker after leaving his old party, yet he acted like the absolute perfect enchanter during today's entire dungeon run. As Logan pieces the information together, he realizes that he completely misunderstood Orhun from the start. He admits that when he first heard about the banishment, he was angry and felt like Orhun had betrayed his expectations. However, reflecting on the battles, Logan realizes that Orhun secretly cast an agility down debuff on the orc, a spell so incredibly difficult that even Selma rarely attempts it. Furthermore, during the fight with the Death Tarantula, Orhun perfectly read the flow of the battle, utilized the ideal combat formations, and knew the exact second Logan's buffs would wear off. Logan finally understands that Orhun was predicting the monster's attacks and giving flawless orders the entire time. Logan admits that Orhun is a true genius and is operating on a level far above his own. He wonders why someone with such incredible enchanting skills would ever convert to a frontline attacker, but the girls assure him that Orhun is incredibly strong with a sword too. Determined not to be left behind, Logan violently psychs himself up, vowing to steal every single tactic he can from Orhun in order to get stronger. Caroline notices his intense, scary expression and asks if he is tired. but Logan insists he is just getting fully prepared for tomorrow. The girls match his energy and enthusiastically psych themselves up as well. Back at the tavern table, Logan and his companion ask Orhun to explain his bizarre decision to switch from an enchanter back to a swordsman. Orhun explains that his grandfather was a legendary former explorer who once defeated a massive monster in their village with just a single sword strike. Seeing that amazing feat made Orhun want to be a swordsman more than anything else since he was a kid. Logan asks why he ever became an enchanter in the first place if he loved swords so much. Orhun explains that as the heroes' party ventured deeper into the lower floors of the dungeon, the monsters became significantly stronger and their exploration pace drastically dropped. Desperate to keep moving quickly, the party decided they needed a dedicated enchanter to buff their stats. Since Orhun was a versatile jack-of-all-trades who could easily learn any skill, the party forced him into the enchanter role for their own convenience. Logan suggests that since it got them all the way to floor 94, it must have been the right decision. Orhun firmly disagrees, stating it was a terrible way to handle the situation. He explains that instead of forcing a role swap, the party should have simply slowed their pace and focused on actually getting stronger. He confidently declares that because of their poor fundamental strategies, the heroes' party has absolutely zero chance of ever getting past floor 94. Logan is fascinated and asks Orhun what his ideal image of a swordsman is. Orhun smiles and describes his ultimate goal as becoming an amazing jack-of-all-trades swordsman who is strong enough to easily clear even the lowest dungeon floors completely on his own. Later that night, Caroline and Sophia are washing up together in the inn's bathroom. Caroline sighs, mentioning that the teaching expedition officially ends tomorrow, meaning they will likely have to say goodbye to Orhun forever. She passionately wishes that Orhun would just stay and join the Silver Rabbits permanently. She tries to convince Sophia to personally ask him to join, theorizing that Orhun might actually agree if she asks nicely. Sophia blushes and refuses, insisting that it would be incredibly selfish to make such a demand, especially since Orhun already has his own plans. However, as the shower water runs over her, Sophia softly admits to herself that it would be truly sad to never see him again, leaving her secretly considering the idea. The next morning, the sun shines brightly over the rocky canyon as Orhun and the massive group of students gather before the towering cave entrance, fully prepared to embark on their final and most dangerous descent into the great dungeon. Early the next morning, Orhun greets the Night Sky Silver Rabbits as they prepare for their final day in the dungeon. The girls are excited and ask Orhun if they can get a reward for successfully pulling off the expedition. Sophia blushes and hints that she wants something specific from Orhun, but before she can finish her thought, Orhun gets distracted by some passing students. The students gossip about the new heroes party heading into the deepest part of the dungeon to test out their teamwork on floor 92. Orhun listens to the rumor and quietly notes that testing a new party dynamic on such a deep floor is incredibly foolish, but he brushes it off since it is no longer his problem. Meanwhile, deep within the dungeon on floor 92, the heroes party begins their exploration. Oliver is acting incredibly arrogant and brags about how glad he is that Orhun is finally gone. He introduces their new enchanter, Philly, and tells her to impress them. Philly promises to do her best, and Oliver remains completely confident that they will easily clear the dungeon now that their perceived weak link is out of the picture. 2 days prior, the heroes party threw a lavish welcome banquet for Philly. Philly introduced herself as a highly skilled enchanter who previously reached the 100th floor in the western dungeon. The party celebrated and constantly complained about how stingy Orhun was with the group's finances, completely ignoring the fact that Orhun was just being responsible. Suddenly, Luna arrived at the party looking frantic. She demanded to know why she just saw Orhun hanging out with the Night Sky Silver Rabbits. Oliver and Derek casually admitted that they kicked Orhun out of the party 3 days ago because they thought he was too weak. Luna was absolutely horrified by this revelation. She angrily explained that Orhun was the core of their entire team and that they only made it this far because of his specific support skills. Derek and Anili laughed off her concerns, claiming that the rest of the world considered Orhun a useless jack-of-all-trades and that Philly would be a massive upgrade. Luna vehemently opposed their plan to test Philly on floor 92. She reminded them that they barely managed to survive against the Black Dragon on that floor, even when Orhun was with them. Oliver arrogantly dismissed her warning, claiming that they only struggled because Orhun was holding them back. He insisted that the decision was final and forced Luna to come along. Back in the present, the heroes party completely struggles against a massive mammoth monster. Oliver swings his golden sword at the beast, but the blade simply bounces off its tusks. He complains that his weapon feels incredibly heavy and realizes that his physical buffs have already worn off. He yells at Philly to reapply her support magic, but Philly is completely overwhelmed. She frantically tries to cast her green magic circles while explaining that she still hasn't figured out their unique fighting styles. Oliver gets angry, recalling that Orhun figured out their combat flow within an hour on his first day. The mammoth attacks, firing a massive blue energy beam at Derek. Derek raises his large red shield to block it, but the impact easily blows him away. He crashes to the ground and angrily wonders why his defense is suddenly so weak. Annalie steps up and casts a fire bullet spell, but the resulting explosion is tiny and barely singes the mammoth's fur. The monster immediately retaliates by shooting twin energy beams at Annalie, blasting her across the cavern. Oliver screams at Philly to buff Annalie, but Philly cries out that she already cast the buffs. Nothing is working the way it usually does. Oliver tries to fight back, but 3 teal beams of light strike him, sending him flying backward. He demands that Philly analyze the monster's attack patterns and warn them, but Philly tearfully admits that she can barely keep up with casting her basic support spells. Oliver realizes that none of them can draw out their usual power. Luna watches the disastrous fight and coldly asks Oliver if he finally understands why they are so weak. Before Luna can explain the truth, a massive black dragon suddenly crashes down from the ceiling. Oliver is completely shocked because the black dragon is supposed to be locked entirely within the boss area. The dragon lands directly on the mammoth, instantly crushing it into purple dust. The sheer force of the dragon's landing creates a massive shockwave that blows Oliver and Derek backward. Luna immediately screams at the team to run away. Derek and Annalie refuse to retreat, arrogantly believing they can easily kill the dragon since they defeated it once before. Annalie quickly casts a massive fire javelin spell, but the explosion does absolutely no damage to the dragon. The beast simply ignores the flames and unleashes a circular burst of fire from its mouth. The massive fireball completely blasts Annalie and Derek, knocking them entirely out of the fight. Luna rushes over to heal them with her staff while Philly stands completely frozen in fear. Oliver realizes that they are about to be completely wiped out. The dragon opens its mouth and begins charging a devastating breath attack. Luna and Philly desperately combine their magic to create a green protective barrier to buy Oliver some time. Oliver activates his magical convergence and charges his sword with a brilliant yellow aura. He leaps into the air and unleashes his ultimate attack, Divine Flash, directly into the dragon's incoming breath blast. A massive explosion erupts in the cave, but Oliver's attack is completely overpowered. The blast sends Oliver tumbling through the air, and he crashes hard against the rocky floor. Defeated and terrified, Oliver asks Luna what they should do. Luna pulls out a magical artifact called a Fickle Gate. She explains that it is an emergency escape item that will forcibly teleport them to a random boss room somewhere in the dungeon. She warns that they will have to immediately fight another boss, but it is better than dying to the black dragon. Oliver agrees, and Luna shatters the vial on the ground, creating a massive purple portal. The team quickly jumps into the gate just as the dragon lunges at them. However, the portal rapidly expands and the black dragon dives into the gate right behind them. The team violently lands in a snowy crystalline landscape, expecting to be attacked. They quickly look around and realize the black dragon is nowhere to be seen. Derek is relieved, assuming the dragon simply vanished. Luna is absolutely horrified and explains that this is the worst possible outcome. Since the dragon entered the expanding gate, it was teleported to a completely random part of the dungeon. This means an incredibly dangerous boss monster is now roaming freely and will likely slaughter any unsuspecting adventurers it encounters. Luna states that they have no choice but to immediately return to the guild and request a forced teleport to evacuate everyone from the dungeon. She adds that once everyone is safe, they will have to beg Orhun to come back and help them kill the dragon. Oliver furiously refuses to ask Orhun for help. Luna sighs and finally forces Oliver to listen to the real reason they are currently so weak. She explains that typical support magic requires the caster to set the potency, while the duration is determined by the target's body. An average buff lasts around 3 minutes. However, Oliver and the rest of the party have incredibly high natural magic resistance. Because of this resistance, normal buffs wear off on them in less than a minute. Philly is actually a very talented enchanter, but she simply cannot overcome their body's natural rejection of her magic. Orhun fully understood this limitation. Luna reveals that Orhun knew he lacked raw magical power, so he spent all his time secretly developing original magic to compensate. Instead of just buffing their bodies, Orhun cast highly complex spells directly onto their weapons and armor so the buffs wouldn't vanish. More importantly, Orhun's original magic amplified their attacks by over 50 times. Luna reminds them that even an elite enchanter like Selma from the Silver Rabbits can only amplify an attack by 10 times. Oliver and Anneli are completely shocked to learn that their ultimate attacks only worked because Orhun was multiplying their damage by 50. Luna ruthlessly points out that Oliver became completely arrogant because of this hidden support. He wrongly assumed that his devastating sword strikes and Anneli's massive explosions were the result of their own natural talent. Because they felt so powerful, they got lazy and completely stopped spending time gathering their own magical energy. Oliver's divine flash failed against the dragon because he barely charged any of his own mana, relying entirely on a 50 times multiplier that no longer existed. They were never actually strong, they were just completely dependent on Orhun holding their hands. The crushing reality finally sets in for the party. They slowly make their way out of the dungeon and return to the surface under a gloomy sky. As they walk down the canyon path, a group of regular adventurers spots them. The adventurers excitedly point at them, praising the hero's party and expressing total awe at their supposed greatness. Hearing the unearned praise completely breaks Oliver. He grits his teeth and screams that they are not heroes at all. He cries out that they just put every single adventurer in the dungeon in mortal danger because of their own sheer incompetence. He turns away from his team and loudly curses his own weakness. However, the guilt quickly twists into severe delusion. Unable to accept that he is nothing without Orhun, Oliver begins screaming that he actually defeated the Black Dragon all by himself the first time. He shouts into the void that his party is perfectly fine without Orhun, completely rejecting reality as his entire self-worth shatters. Meanwhile, Orhun stands before the members of the Night Sky Silver Rabbits in a dark cavern, completely unaware of the disaster unfolding with his former party. He explains that their main goal for the final day of the expedition is to clear the dungeon from the 36th floor all the way down to the 50th floor. Once they reach the 51st floor, they plan to use their teleportation crystals to head back to the surface and call it a day. The young recruits, including the pink-haired defender Caroline, the blonde boy Logan, and the red-haired girl Sophia, are all incredibly eager to do their best. Orhun reminds the group of their strategy, stating that the experienced chaperones will handle any powerful monsters the new recruits cannot manage, and everyone will join forces for the major boss fights. The plan seems simple enough, but Orhun suddenly gets a terrible feeling in his gut. He senses an ominous presence lurking somewhere within the Great Dungeon today, though he cannot quite figure out what is causing this overwhelming dread. Caroline interrupts his thoughts, excitedly asking what kind of monsters they will get to slaughter today. Orhun sighs and reminds Caroline that she cannot just mindlessly charge at the enemies because her role is strictly to be a defender. Caroline complains that playing defensively means everyone else has to work extra hard, and she firmly insists that she wants to fight on the front lines. Orhun tries to explain that there is a limit to what a single person can do, urging her to start thinking of herself as part of a cooperative team while she is still a novice. Logan chimes in, noting that even the famous adventurer Albert Sensible always emphasized the importance of working together. Orhun recognizes the name as the legendary ace of the Night Sky Silver Rabbits, recalling that Albert tragically died fighting the Black Dragon on the 92nd floor the previous year. Logan explains that Albert is still a massive hero to everyone in the clan because he sacrificed himself to protect a comrade. Caroline completely misinterprets the lesson and decides that the best way to protect her friends is to fight entirely alone on the front lines so the enemies never get close to anyone else. Sophia looks worried about Caroline's reckless mindset, and Orhun realizes he needs to properly guide her before she gets herself killed. A bit later, the group reaches the 36th floor, which is a massive cavern filled with stalagmites. Selma, the red-haired clan leader and Sophia's older sister, approaches Orhun and notes that the rookies have really taken a liking to him. Orhun admits he was worried they would reject him after a negative newspaper article, but he is glad they accept his presence. Selma asks Orhun to look after Logan and Caroline since they can be a handful despite their bright futures. They briefly discuss Albert's death, and Selma admits that his loss was a devastating blow to the clan, allowing the heroes' party to overtake them in conquering the Great Dungeon. She confesses that they are still struggling to fill the massive hole Albert left behind. Orhun playfully suggests she just needs to find someone good to replace him. Selma smirks and tells Orhun that they do not need another enchanter since they already have the best one on the continent, but she is very interested in seeing his skills as a swordsman during the upcoming floor boss battle. The expedition continues smoothly until they reach the 40th floor, where Selma splits the large group into several smaller squads to practice navigating the labyrinth. Orhun ends up alone with the three rookies, and they quickly ask him to share his knowledge about the deepest parts of the dungeon since he has explored further than anyone else. He casually tells them about the lower floors being covered in freezing snow and the deepest floors being filled with toxic swamps, answering their rapid-fire questions as they walk. Back on the surface, Luna completely bursts into the guild building in an absolute panic. She sprints past the reception desks and furiously demands that the guild master initiate an emergency force teleport to pull absolutely everyone out of the dungeon immediately. The guild master tries to brush her off, explaining that the mana cost for such a massive spell is far too high to use without a proper emergency. Luna screams that the black dragon from the 92nd floor has escaped through a fickle gate and is now roaming entirely at random somewhere in the dungeon. The guildmaster and the surrounding adventurers are completely shocked to learn that a floor boss can use magic items to teleport. Luna desperately explains that the dragon could appear anywhere at any moment, and the unsuspecting adventurers inside have absolutely no idea they are in mortal danger. Meanwhile, Orhun and the rookies notice that the 40th floor is completely devoid of monsters. Orhun realizes this eerily quiet atmosphere is the exact source of his bad feeling from earlier, figuring out that all the regular monsters are probably hiding because they are terrified of something much stronger. Suddenly, a blue-skinned azure goblin leaps out of the shadows. Caroline immediately disobeys orders and charges straight at the goblin with her curved blade. Orhun quickly casts a debuff spell to drastically lower the goblin's agility, allowing Caroline to easily slice it to pieces. She celebrates her quick victory, but Orhun angrily scolds her for running off on her own. He explains that azure goblins are incredibly fast, and if he had not slowed it down, she would have been seriously injured. Caroline apologizes, so Orhun decides to teach her a specialized technique called active defense. He explains that every living creature has to physically prepare before launching an attack, like stepping forward before throwing a punch. If she can read those subtle movements and strike the enemy's legs right as they step forward, she can completely stop their attack before it even begins. This allows her to stay on the front lines while still fulfilling her role as a defender by locking down the enemy's movements. Caroline is thrilled by this new strategy and promises to practice it. Logan then eagerly asks Orhun to teach him something about debuffs. Orhun explains that debuffing enemies on the deeper floors is usually a waste of time because high-level monsters have massive magic resistance. Instead, he teaches Logan about trap magic. Orhun casually reveals that he has been secretly laying explosive magical traps behind them this entire time to prevent any monsters from ambushing them. He demonstrates by luring a pair of massive white wolves into a hidden trap, which instantly impales the beasts on jagged ice spikes. He explains that an enchanter's real job is to completely control the battlefield and reduce risks so the rest of the party can focus solely on attacking. Logan is absolutely mesmerized and realizes this is exactly the kind of smart enchanter he wants to become. Next, Sophia shyly asks what she needs to learn to improve her magic. Orhun tells her she needs to master parallel construction, which is the ability to cast 2 or more spells at the exact same time. He explains that simply firing off powerful spells one by one leaves a mage completely vulnerable during the casting time. If she can start preparing her second spell while the first one is only halfway done, she can eliminate her downtime and provide constant magical support. Sophia is amazed and desperately asks Orhun to teach her the technique instead of her sister. Orhun nervously agrees, completely unaware that Sophia is developing a massive crush on him. Back at the guild, the magical council quickly gathers around a glowing blue crystal table to prepare the force teleport spell. The guildmaster angrily scolds Oliver and his party for causing such a massive disaster. Oliver furiously denies any responsibility, claiming they did nothing wrong and that the dragon's escape is not their fault. The guildmaster ignores his pathetic excuses and orders everyone to focus entirely on charging the massive spell to save the trapped adventurers. He also orders the heroes party to go back inside and hunt down the black dragon once the teleportation is complete. Oliver and the other members are completely terrified by this order, knowing they stand absolutely no chance against the beast after their previous humiliating defeat. Luna simply accepts the command, knowing they have to rely on Orhun to fix their mess, and tells the guildmaster they will head out immediately. Meanwhile, Luna desperately leads the remaining members of the heroes' party through the forest toward the dungeon entrance. Oliver stubbornly asks why she demanded the guildmaster pull out the people on the middle floors first. Luna furiously explains that they specifically need to save Orhun because he is currently exploring those exact floors. Oliver gets angry and asks what that useless jack-of-all-trades has to do with anything. Luna snaps back, brutally stating that they are currently the weakest party in the entire world without his buffs, and it is entirely up to Orhun whether they survive the upcoming fight with the dragon. Deep in the dungeon, Orhun and the rookies regroup with Selma and the other senior members to take on a massive, four-armed blue giant. Orhun tells the rookies to stay back and watch how an advanced party operates. During the fight, Orhun flawlessly uses the active defense technique he just taught Caroline, perfectly predicting the giant's movements and striking its legs to lock it in place. Because the monster cannot move, Selma easily uses her parallel construction to cast multiple destructive spells at once, completely obliterating the giant in a matter of seconds. The rookies are absolutely blown away by the incredible teamwork and lack of wasted movements, feeling more inspired than ever to become top-tier adventurers. A bit later, the group finally reaches the 50th floor and prepares to fight the floor boss, which is a massive purple gigant crab with incredibly tough armor. Selma tells the team that they just need to cut off its massive claws, and then they can easily break its main shell. She playfully tells Orhun to handle the claws since he is so confident. Orhun happily steps up to the challenge, drawing his silver sword. He secretly casts his original spell, Impact, which he actually created entirely by accident while trying to fix a different magic formula. This cheat-like spell forcibly enhances his weapon's power and toughness by 100 times for a single instant. He feels a bit guilty using such an overpowered trick, but he knows it is necessary to survive the deepest floors. He lunges forward and uses this massive power boost to instantly slice clean through the gigant crab's armored claw, leaving the rookies completely speechless at his raw physical strength. With the crab disarmed, Selma and the others unleash a barrage of powerful magic, easily cracking the monster's shell and reducing it to a pile of glowing dust. The entire party cheers in victory, thrilled that they successfully cleared the dungeon all the way to the 50th floor without any major casualties. Selma congratulates everyone on their hard work over the past 3 days and announces that it is finally time to head home. Orhun crosses his arms and smiles, feeling completely satisfied that his job as a temporary escort is done. He happily chats with Caroline, Sophia, and Logan, relieved that the expedition went off without a hitch. However, right at that exact moment, the dark rocky ceiling above them suddenly shatters like fragile glass. A massive tear in space opens up, and shimmering purple light spills into the cavern. Before anyone can react, the terrifying black dragon crashes down through the portal, letting out a deafening roar that shakes the entire floor. Caroline, Sophia, and the rest of the Night Sky Silver Rabbits are completely frozen in absolute terror at the sight of the legendary beast that killed their former ace. Orhun stares up at the massive monster with a completely shocked and horrified expression, unable to comprehend how the most dangerous boss in the dungeon just bypassed 50 floors to land right in front of them. The group finishes up their expedition and everyone feels totally relieved to finally head home. Orhun stands with his arms crossed and smiles because his job as an escort is officially over. The young recruits cheer and wave at him, glad that nothing went wrong during their training. Suddenly, the dark rocky ceiling above them shatters into pieces, shooting vibrant purple light everywhere. A massive dark armored dragon crashes right through the barrier and lands in front of the group. Everyone completely freezes in terror as the beast lets out a deafening roar. Sophia gasps and sweats in absolute shock, quickly realizing that this is the legendary Black Dragon. The rookies panic and scream because this monster is a ruthless tyrant that normally lives on the 92nd floor, making it impossible for it to be here. Sophia tries to take command of the terrified students, but the dragon just looms over them with glowing yellow eyes. Orhun quickly tries to figure out a survival plan for the group. He notes that the regular boss of this floor is already dead, meaning they just need to sneak past the dragon and reach the teleportation crystal to escape. He briefly considers running away alone, knowing that the monster will likely focus on the large crowd of students and let him slip by. However, he immediately rejects the cowardly thought. He clenches his fist and vows to fight the Black Dragon himself because his main job is to ensure the new adventurers make it back alive. He draws his silver sword and accepts that buying time won't work, meaning he has to actually defeat the beast to save everyone. Orhun shouts at the chaperones to do whatever it takes to protect the rookies and orders them to take a defensive posture. Kathy quickly conjures a massive glowing green magic barrier over the group, just as the dragon unleashes a colossal blast of yellow energy from its mouth. The shield takes the hit, and Orhun instantly charges into the massive fiery explosion. He uses a blue magical attack to strike the dragon right in the head and then flips back to the ground. As the smoke clears, the rookies look around in shock and realize they are still alive. Sophia wonders if Orhun secretly boosted their shield at the last second. Suddenly, Orhun leaps out of the dust cloud wielding 2 swords. He bites down on a small glowing potion vial and dashes straight at the massive monster. He specifically waits for the exact instant the dragon closes its eyes to strike. He hits the beast with incredible force, causing a massive yellow explosion that fills the cavern with smoke. The other adventurers hold up their shields and assume the monster is dead, but Orhun feels frustrated because he knows his attack was not strong enough. The smoke clears to reveal the dragon completely unharmed. Orhun tells his group that he is fine and orders them to stay back and keep guarding the rookie. He confidently states that he has a plan to deal with the black dragon alone. He walks straight toward the monster and taunts it to draw its aggro away from the students. Sophia desperately yells out his name, terrified that he will end up dying just like their former ace Albert. The dragon breathes a massive torrent of bright orange fire directly at Orhun. Instead of dodging, Orhun raises his hand and casts an original spell called Reflective Wall. A glowing green magical sphere appears and perfectly bounces the massive fireball right back into the dragon's face. Caroline and Logan watch in pure disbelief because they have never seen or heard of a spell that reflects attacks. Orhun explains that this wall bounces any physical or magical force right back at the attacker. However, the dragon just shakes off its own fire breath without a single scratch. Orhun realizes he has to take some serious risks to win. He gathers glowing orbs of light and casts a high-level support spell called Status Up to boost all of his physical stats. Sophia watches closely and notes that his support magic usually only doubles a person's power, which is not nearly enough to hurt the dragon. She offers to help, but Orhun suddenly yells out the spell again to double the effect. He then shouts it again for a triple boost, then a quadruple boost, and finally a quintuple boost. Bright green magic circles stack around him as thick black beams of energy penetrate his body. He pushes himself even further, shouting for a sextuple, septuple, and octuple boost. Sophia looks on in absolute shock and calls his actions impossible. She explains that recasting a support spell normally just resets the time limit, but Orhun somehow managed to cast it 5 times consecutively. He becomes completely engulfed in a blinding yellow aura with sparks of electricity shooting everywhere. The dragon shrieks and stomps the ground, but Orhun vanishes in a flash of light. He moves so fast that he looks like a blur zipping past the monster. The rookies cheer in relief, but Sophia realizes this speed is not from normal support magic. She wonders exactly how many secret abilities Orhun is hiding from them. Orhun crouches on the ground, bleeding heavily from his nose and mouth due to the massive strain. He explains that chaining the casts increased his stats 32 times over, but his body cannot handle the burden of running 30 different spells at once for very long. He pushes through the pain and charges back into the fight to end things quickly. He jumps onto the dragon's back and slides along its scales, violently striking its hide with his sword and sending bright sparks flying. He completely dodges a massive energy beam and uses invisible mid-air platforms to jump over the beast. Logan and Caroline think he is using flight magic, but Orhun clarifies that it is a special ability called Magical Convergence. He explains that this rare power allows him to gather magic into a single point and materialize it into solid stepping stones to propel himself through the air. He mentions that his old teammate Oliver has the exact same ability but only uses it for basic attacks. Orhun then casts Sharpness Up and Durable Up on his blade. He yells out the name of his original spell, Impact, and strikes the dragon directly in the face. A massive pillar of blue light erupts, and the dragon's thick armor finally shatters into pieces. The rookies celebrate, amazed that he actually broke through the monster's defenses. However, Sophia knows Orhun is severely injured and questions how he plans to finish off the boss entirely on his own. Suddenly, the cavern begins to shake violently. The dragon recovers and unleashes its strongest spell, turning the surrounding purple mist into a deadly weapon. Sophia explains that this specific attack has killed countless adventurers and is basically pure fear materialized. She suddenly feels a strange trembling in her chest and realizes she is deeply worried about Orhun. She shakes off the feeling and vows to protect the new recruits so Orhun can focus entirely on his duel. The dragon fires multiple purple energy projectiles at Orhun. He realizes the monster is finally taking the fight seriously. He dodges the blasts and fires a fire bullet spell at the dragon's back. The dragon immediately changes its attack pattern, turning the energy into hyper-fast glowing needles. Orhun casts a rock wall spell to block the needles, but the dragon maneuvers around the rocks and fires a massive beam straight at him. Orhun barely survives by hiding behind another reflective wall. He pants heavily and admits that fighting alone is incredibly tough. He remembers his days with the Heroes Party and thinks about how Derek, Luna, Annalie, and Oliver used to handle all the different enemy mechanics to keep him safe. Now, he is forced to do all of their jobs by himself. During the intense clash, Orhun remembers his childhood training with Oliver. Long ago, their peaceful village was brutally attacked by a group of ruthless bandits. The attackers burned the buildings to the ground and slaughtered innocent people in the streets. Young Orhun and Oliver stood terrified among the bloody corpses of their friends and neighbors. Oliver cried in total anguish and swore to become strong enough to ensure no one could ever steal from him again. Standing before a field of wooden graves, a young Orhun wiped his tears and swore to gain enough power to protect everything he cared about. Back in the present, this tragic memory fuels Orhun's determination. He vows to defeat the horror right in front of him without relying on anyone else. He uses an active defense technique to constantly dodge and parry the dragon's strikes, perfectly pinning the monster down so it cannot target the rookie. Caroline is amazed to see him fighting like a master defender while keeping them completely safe. Orhun then uses his parallel construction skill to cast multiple explosive spells at the same time. A series of intricate magic circles surround the dragon, and a massive chain of fiery explosions engulfs the beast. Orhun explains he used a trap spell called Raise and Repeat, which absorbs the surrounding magical power and fires the dragon's previous attack back at a much higher intensity. Logan realizes Orhun is manipulating the entire battlefield perfectly like a true enchanter. Orhun tells the dragon that it is incredibly strong, but he still needs to fill the role of the main attacker to land the killing blow. He uses his magical convergence to materialize a massive pitch-black sword out of pure shadow energy. He declares that he wants to be a swordsman who can fulfill every single role in a party. He mimics Oliver's signature attack, Divine Flash, and combines it with his own impact spell. He unleashes a colossal purple and white energy blast that completely engulfs the dragon. A blinding explosion shakes the entire cavern, and the monster's tail disintegrates into smoke. The rookies cheer, thinking the battle is finally over. However, the dragon emerges from the dust, having sacrificed its own tail to survive the fatal hit. It roars furiously and glares at Orhun with a glowing red eye. Orhun drops his black sword and acknowledges that they are both on their last legs. He decides to end the fight with his ultimate move. He casts a spell called Destruction, which concentrates highly amplified magic into a physical weapon. A massive pillar of dark energy erupts from the floor and envelops him. The shadows form into an impossibly large, pitch-black greatsword in his hands. He states that the raw power of this weapon far exceeds any special rank spell. He grips the giant blade tightly and charges forward for the final clash. The dragon fires another massive purple beam, but Orhun flies straight through the chaotic energy. He dodges multiple magical seals and streaks of lightning while rushing toward the monster. He casts Wait Up to add even more momentum to his strike, and plunges his glowing weapon directly into the dragon. He yells out his impact spell one last time, and triggers a colossal explosion of red, white, and yellow light. The blinding blast shatters the dragon completely, sending its massive body crashing into the rocky floor. The beast quickly dissolves into thick clouds of purple smoke, signaling its permanent defeat. The young adventurers stare in absolute shock and awe at the massive crater left behind. Orhun stands victorious in the smoke-filled cavern, leaning heavily on his giant sword while panting for breath. Sophia starts crying tears of joy, completely overwhelmed with relief that he survived. Orhun gives a soft, exhausted smile before his legs finally give out. He collapses toward the ground, but Caroline quickly rushes out of the magic barrier and catches him. The rest of the team runs over and cheers wildly, celebrating their incredible victory over the Black Dragon. The teleportation light suddenly engulfs everyone and transports the entire group out of the dungeon to a rocky canyon. The students and chaperones look around in complete confusion before realizing they were force teleported because the Black Dragon was actually defeated. Everyone stares at the massive wall of hexagonal pillars as Orhun slowly approaches the group from the bright light. He looks completely exhausted, and his face is covered in faint scratches. He leans heavily on Sophia's older sister and asks her to handle the cleanup from the battle before completely collapsing into her arms. The rest of the group realizes Orhun is the only one who looks injured. They piece things together and stare in absolute shock, finally understanding that Orhun actually fought and defeated the legendary monster all by himself. Suddenly, Derek storms over and confronts Orhun. The blonde knight is completely furious and refuses to believe that Orhun beat the beast alone. He starts screaming that it is impossible and demands an explanation. Sophia's older sister quickly steps in front of Orhun and firmly states that Orhun is clearly the one who won the fight. She tells Derek to stop acting out and to finally accept his own weakness. Derek gets even angrier and yells at her for always trying to boss them around before aggressively charging at her to start a fight. Sophia's older sister stays completely calm and calls out to her fairy companion, Pixie. A glowing green magic circle instantly appears beneath Derek's feet. The heavy magic forces Derek to his knees. He grunts and struggles to move his armored body, but the unseen force completely pins him to the rocky ground. Sophia's older sister tells everyone that the fight is over and orders both sides to stand down. Oliver just stands nearby and grits his teeth in silent frustration, unable to do anything to help his party member. Later that night at the academy, Sophia sits at her desk and tries to write her expedition report. However, she cannot focus because she is completely obsessed with Orhun's performance. She blushes and smiles like crazy while thinking about how he saved her life again and taught her advanced magic. She is totally captivated by how cool and kind he is. Suddenly, her older sister walks into the room. The older sister looks completely exhausted and her face is a mess. She just drops her bag and faceplants straight onto her bed. Sophia notices how tired her sister is and suggests they go to the bathhouse to relax. A little while later, the two sisters soak in the steaming hot spring. The older sister thanks Sophia for her help and expresses her relief that everyone survived the expedition. She credits their survival entirely to Orhun. She then asks Sophia what she thought of Orhun's fighting style. The older sister admits that Orhun's power is so overwhelming that she cannot even begin to understand how he fights. Sophia surprises her by saying she actually understood his movements perfectly. She explains that despite his amazing speed and magic, his entire fighting style is just built on the basic fundamentals of rear attackers and defenders. The older sister is amazed by Sophia's deep understanding. She affectionately kisses Sophia on the forehead and tells her how much she respects her. The older sister praises Sophia for always walking on her own 2 feet and being someone people can rely on. She admits she wants to be more like Sophia but warns her not to push herself too hard. Sophia just blushes and smiles happily at the compliment. The next morning, Orhun wakes up in his room and groans in agonizing pain. His entire body aches from pushing past his physical limits during the boss fight. He casts a pain relief spell on himself just to get out of bed. He looks out the window and figures it is already close to noon. He feels lucky that he does not have any permanent damage after using so many stacked spells at once. Shortly after, Selma stops by his room for a visit. They sit down at his wooden table with some drinks, and Selma formally thanks him for saving her and the new recruits during the expedition. She bows her head, but Orhun quickly tells her to stop bowing because he does not care about formal positions. Selma then gets down to business and asks Orhun to come with her to the clan headquarters because her leader specifically wants to meet him. Orhun agrees to go since he has nothing else planned for the day. They head over to a massive stone building surrounded by lush trees and dark flags. Inside a richly decorated office, Orhun meets Vince, the leader of the Night Sky Silver Rabbits. Vince does not waste any time and formally invites Orhun to join their clan as a frontline attacker for their strongest team, Unit 1. On top of that, Vince offers to make Orhun a lieutenant right away. Orhun is totally caught off guard by the offer and points out that he is far too young for a leadership role. Vince completely dismisses that concern, stating that Orhun has more than enough power and experience to handle it. Selma agrees and adds that Orhun is incredibly hardworking and educated. She smiles and says she really wants to work alongside him to support their clan. Orhun admits that anyone else would jump at this massive opportunity without a second thought. However, his past experiences make him hesitant, so he politely asks them for some time to think it over. Vince completely understands and tells him to take all the time he needs. Before Orhun leaves, Vince mentions that the Adventurers Guild also wants to speak with him. Orhun heads back into town and walks past the busy markets. He feels exhausted just thinking about all the drama waiting for him and stops by an old potion shop to talk to the elderly shopkeeper. Orhun complains about the guild meeting and then brings up the clan offer. He admits that the Silver Rabbits clearly respect his skills, but he is terrified of joining another party. He tells the old man that he is afraid of being used and thrown away again, just like his old teammates did to him. The shopkeeper laughs a little and says it is nice to see Orhun acting like a normal kid for once, instead of always pretending to be a mature adult. The old man then gives him some serious advice, explaining that getting used by others is not always a bad thing. He believes that relying on each other and making up for each other's weaknesses is exactly how people grow stronger. He encourages Orhun to think deeply about the offer before completely shutting it down. Orhun leaves the shop and heads straight to the Adventurers Guild. He walks into a grand wood-paneled room and finds himself right in the middle of a tense meeting. The Guildmaster is currently interrogating Oliver and his entire party about the dungeon incident. The Guildmaster demands to know why Oliver took a brand new enchanter straight to the dangerous 90th floors. Suspecting Oliver only did it because he assumed it would be easy, Orhun speaks up and agrees with the Guildmaster. Derek and the Witch Girl immediately start mocking Orhun. They arrogantly claim that they did all the hard work weakening the Black Dragon, and Orhun just got incredibly lucky to land the final blow. Orhun completely ignores their insults and tells them to shut their mouths because they are entirely irrelevant to the real issue. Orhun turns his full attention to Oliver and reminds him that he warned him countless times about diving too deep before the party was actually ready. He brings up several past incidents where party members almost died on the lower floors because of Oliver's reckless decisions. Oliver gets defensive and argues that this is exactly why he fired Orhun and hired a new enchanter. Oliver claims that since the new enchanter has stronger support magic, they should have been perfectly fine. Orhun states that he is not even mad about getting fired anymore, but what truly pisses him off is how little Oliver respects the role of an enchanter. Oliver loudly insists that an enchanter's job is incredibly easy and claims all they have to do is sit safely in the back and recast a buff whenever the previous one runs out. Orhun is absolutely disgusted by Oliver's sheer ignorance. He stares Oliver down and asks if he is seriously that clueless. Oliver stubbornly doubles down and insists he is telling the truth. Orhun decides to brutally expose Oliver's lack of knowledge by listing off the exact durations of every single party member's buffs from memory. He states that Oliver's buff lasts exactly 61 seconds, Anili's lasts 134 seconds, and Derek's lasts 186 seconds. Orhun explains that a real enchanter has to perfectly track all of those different timers simultaneously, refresh them at the exact right millisecond, and still manage to give tactical commands to the entire party in the middle of a chaotic battle. He furiously yells at Oliver, demanding to know how any of that sounds easy. Oliver is left completely speechless and just stands there sweating and gritting his teeth, unable to come up with a single counter-argument to Orhun's hard facts. Meanwhile, back at the academy, Sophia walks down the hallway with her pink-haired friend and her blonde friend. They are busy discussing Orhun's future, and the blonde boy asks if anyone thinks Orhun will actually join the Night Sky Silver Rabbits. The pink-haired girl is super excited about the idea and suggests they all go find Orhun to beg him to join. However, Sophia looks a bit sad and walks out to the garden to sit on a bench. She tells her friends that she really wants Orhun to join them, but she feels like he does not need them at all. She remembers watching Orhun fight the dragon and realizing just how massive the power gap between them is. She even recalls her own magic failing her during the battle, and honestly believes that at their current level, they will only ever slow Orhun down and get in his way. Her friends refuse to accept that negative mindset. The blonde boy confidently states that just being around someone as strong as Orhun will help them figure out what they need to learn. The pink-haired girl cheers and agrees, saying that having Orhun teach them is the best way to get stronger. Sophia listens to her friends and slowly realizes she is overthinking things. She decides to stop feeling sorry for herself and agrees to use this as an opportunity to grow. She tells her friends that Orhun is currently at the Adventurers Guild, and the group immediately sprints off toward the city to track him down. Orhun finishes his meeting and walks down the street feeling totally drained. Suddenly, he spots Sophia and her friends running toward him. He immediately realizes they are going to ask him to join the clan, and since he still hasn't made up his mind, he decides to just avoid the awkward conversation entirely. He turns around and takes off running into an alleyway. Sophia's friends spot him and start yelling his name, chasing right after him. Orhun feels the lingering pain from his injuries but forces himself to keep moving. He uses his dark magic to create floating platforms in the air and parkours his way up to the rooftops. He watches from a high ledge as the kids run around the street looking for him. Once the coast is clear, he sighs in relief and heads back to the potion shop. The old shopkeeper immediately calls him out on his behavior and notices that Orhun actually looked like he was having fun running away from the kids. He tells Orhun that he knows he is desperately looking for a place to belong and softly suggests that Orhun does not have to be alone anymore and can finally find his place alongside others. Later that night, Orhun takes a walk to clear his head and wanders out into a massive, grassy field on a hill just outside the city. He stares up at the bright full moon and thinks about the old man's words. Suddenly, Sophia sneaks up behind him and calls his name. Orhun turns around, surprised to see her all the way out here. Sophia immediately bows and thanks him again for saving her life the other day, before asking where he has been all day since they were looking everywhere for him. Orhun nervously lies and says he was just running errands around town. He changes the subject and asks what she is doing out so late. Sophia explains that this hill is right next to their clan headquarters and it is one of her favorite spots to relax. She points up at the moon and says that even when everything is pitch black, the moon always shines bright. She tells Orhun that looking at the moon gives her strength when she feels weak. She then asks if he knows the true meaning behind the name of their clan. Orhun admits he does not, so Sophia explains that the moon is often called the guide of the night. Her clan chose the name because they want to act as a guiding light for all adventurers trying to find their way. This completely resonates with Orhun as he remembers an old conversation about being a guide. Sophia gathers her courage, looks him right in the eyes, and begs him to join the Night Sky Silver Rabbit. She blushes and admits that she just wants to stay by his side. Orhun is touched but wants to know more, so he asks Sophia what the clan actually means to her personally. Sophia smiles warmly and says the clan has taught her so much and given her countless reasons to smile. She proudly declares that the clan is her home and the one place where she truly belongs. Hearing her speak with such pure conviction finally breaks through Orhun's walls. He stares up at the moon and realizes he wants to find his own place to belong to. The very next day, Orhun makes his final decision and returns to the massive stone headquarters to walk right into Vince's office. He stands tall, bows respectfully, and officially asks for permission to join the Night Sky Silver Rabbits. Vince smiles broadly and welcomes him to the family. Selma runs over and excitedly congratulates him before handing Orhun his brand new clan uniform and telling him to try it on immediately. After changing into his new gear, Orhun walks out the large wooden front doors of the headquarters. Sophia and her friends are waiting for him out in the courtyard. They see him wearing the clan colors and instantly start cheering and jumping for joy. Orhun smiles back at them, completely at peace with his choice, and tells them all that he is really looking forward to working with them from now on. Long before these events, a young Orhun and a young Oliver engage in a spirited sparring match using wooden swords. Orhun eventually loses his footing and falls to the ground, casually admitting his defeat. He tells Oliver that he simply cannot beat him anymore because Oliver has grown up to be much stronger. This only infuriates Oliver, who remembers how much better Orhun used to be. Oliver demands to know what happened to his skills, but Orhun simply claims that he is giving it his all and that Oliver's genius is the real reason for the outcome. Oliver refuses to accept this excuse and promises to force Orhun to take their matches seriously in the future before storming off. Left alone, Orhun silently reflects that he has no desire to actually kill Oliver. A young Xion then approaches him and praises his performance, telling him that she knows his true strength. Orhun confesses that his current display is genuinely all the strength he can muster because his heart is far too weak to endure the crushing expectations placed upon them by the adults. He expresses deep guilt over the fact that Oliver is now forced to carry that heavy burden in his place, and he vows to find a way to help his friend. Hearing his despair, Xion crouches beside him and firmly declares that she will never let him face these hardships alone. She tearfully promises to become strong enough to stand by his side and fight the battles together. Even if he goes somewhere far away, she swears she will catch up to him so he does not have to bear the weight of the world by himself. She asks him to simply be her guide for now until the day comes when they can finally walk side by side. In the present day, far from the academy, a bearded guild master for the continent's southern regions urgently reports to a dark-haired grandmaster sitting in a dimly lit room. The guild master explains that an unknown adventurer recently managed to defeat the Black Dragon all alone in the southern territory. This catches the grandmaster's attention as he notes the Black Dragon mysteriously appeared outside its normal habitat on the 92nd floor. The Grandmaster speculates that the recent vanishing of the western region might have caused this anomaly and wonders if Oliver was the one who defeated the beast. The Guildmaster clarifies that it was not Oliver, prompting the Grandmaster to question if it could possibly be Orhun. However, the Grandmaster quickly dismisses his own theory, reasoning that Orhun lacks that level of power and would not challenge a floor boss unless he had returned to his original, highly dangerous state. Assuming Orhun must have found some other way to gain strength, the Grandmaster orders his subordinate to report any further unusual activity regarding Orhun immediately. Elsewhere, deep within a lush forest, an older Xion stands with her 3 party members among a pile of defeated enemies. Her party consists of a blonde armored woman, a blue-haired muscular man, and a pink-haired youth. They casually discuss how 5 top-level adventurer parties teamed up against them, yet still failed to pose a threat. Xion concludes that no powerful adventurers will be visiting the Eastern Great Dungeon for a while, so they should prepare to relocate. Suddenly, a messenger materializes before them to deliver orders from their headquarters. The messenger reveals that a highly powerful individual capable of soloing the Black Dragon has appeared in the Southern Great Dungeon. Headquarters suspects this Dragon Slayer might have already sided with the church, so Xion is ordered to make contact and assassinate him if he proves to be an enemy. Xion realizes the Dragon Slayer is likely not Oliver due to the lack of solid information. Her party members express interest in recruiting the Dragon Slayer if possible, but the muscular man eagerly notes they will just kill him if he belongs to the church. Xion acknowledges the orders and dismisses the messenger. Her team plans their immediate departure to the south, fully aware that they must be careful since it is heavily controlled church territory. Xian thinks to herself about the massive threat this dragon slayer poses, fearing the south might fall just as quickly as the west if this person is truly powerful. She vows to stop that from happening at all costs, determined to fulfill the promises she made to the person she loved most. She remembers the devastating day she received a formal letter informing her of Orhun's supposed death. In her memories, Orhun apologizes for not being able to fight alongside her, and the news completely shatters her heart. Blaming the church for driving Orhun to his demise, Xian swears to fight on alone, promising to slaughter the old men in charge and anyone else who stands in her way. She coldly resolves to kill the Dragon Slayer without hesitation if he chooses to ally with the church. Meanwhile, back at the Night Sky Silver Rabbit's headquarters, Orhun attends a formal council meeting with the clan's top executives. A brown-haired man with glasses stands before the assembly and highly praises Orhun's incredible accomplishments. He highlights how Orhun risked his life to defeat the Black Dragon alone to protect his comrades during the teaching expedition. The man emphasizes Orhun's vast knowledge and exceptional management skills from his time in the Heroes Party, officially recommending Orhun to be promoted to a lieutenant. He explains that Orhun would be taking the place of Albert, a lieutenant who tragically died fighting the Black Dragon the previous year. The promotion requires a 2/3 majority vote from the existing lieutenants, but before the voting can begin, an older man with a mustache interrupts to question Orhun. The older man notes the high expectations placed on the new recruit and sternly asks if Orhun is truly prepared to offer his life for the clan. He explains that a lieutenant's decisions impact everyone, meaning Orhun must put the clan's needs above all else and dedicate his entire being to its survival. Orhun firmly states that he understands the responsibility, but he completely refuses to offer his life for the clan. The council members are immediately shocked and outraged, warning him that such a selfish statement makes him unfit to even be a standard member. The older man calmly asks Orhun to explain his reasoning and why he even bothered joining if he refuses to serve their organization. Orhun clenches his fist and boldly declares that his sole purpose is to protect the people he cares about. He clarifies that he is not pledging his life to the abstract concept of the clan itself, but rather to the actual members within it. He vows to do everything in his power to protect his comrades so he never has to experience the pain of losing someone again. He promises to become strong enough to shield them from any horror, swearing to defend his friends to the bitter end, even if it costs him his life. The older man listens to Orhun's passionate resolve and smiles, completely satisfied with the answer. The man with glasses then proceeds with the vote to finalize Orhun's promotion to lieutenant. Following the intense meeting, Orhun walks down a quiet hallway with Selma, who teases him about giving everyone a scare during the interrogation. They are quickly approached by a short-haired girl named Estella from the Adventure Management Division. Estella enthusiastically asks the newly appointed lieutenant for a favor, wanting him to train a brand new party. Selma chimes in and begs him to accept the request as well. Orhun hesitates, worried that teaching recruits might interfere with his primary duties in Unit 1. Selma reassures him that the clan strictly forbids members from staying in the Great Dungeon for more than 3 days at a time, ensuring he will have far more free time here than he ever did in the Heroes Party. Relieved by the generous schedule, Orhun agrees to take on the teaching role, and Estella happily promises to send over the necessary training materials. Selma then leads Orhun into a meeting room to officially introduce him to the rest of Unit 1. A black-haired girl named Rain eagerly jumps up first, introducing herself as a 24-year-old mage and playfully telling Orhun to rely on his big sister. Orhun catches her off guard by making a sarcastic comment about her maturity, completely flustering her. Next, a blonde-haired girl introduces herself as Lucretia, an 18-year-old healer. A silver-haired young man then introduces himself as Wilkes, a 20-year-old defender who prefers to go by Will. Selma rounds out the group by reintroducing herself as the party's leader and enchanter. Finally, Orhun formally introduces himself as their new 18-year-old frontline attacker, promising to do his best to fill Albert's shoes and catch up to their level of teamwork. Lucretia quickly tells Orhun to drop the stiff formalities so they can communicate more easily as a team. Selma then asks Orhun to share the details of how he managed to defeat the Black Dragon alone so they can better understand his capabilities. Orhun openly reveals that his victory heavily relied on 2 unique original spells he created. He explains that his first spell, Impact, can miraculously multiply the effectiveness of equipment or magic up to 100 times. The group is absolutely stunned by this massive boost. Orhun then describes his second original spell, which allows him to repeatedly stack support magic on himself far beyond normal limits, noting he stacked buffs 32 times during the boss fight. The girls call his abilities completely unfair, but Orhun clarifies that he can only cast these stacked spells on himself. He also admits that the physical stress of channeling that much power is so agonizing that he cannot sustain the forms for very long, which is why the drawn-out fight with the Black Dragon nearly killed him. Will assumes someone with such overwhelming magical talent could easily cover any role in the party, but Orhun solemnly reveals a major flaw in his abilities. He confesses that despite his deep understanding of magic, his actual mana capacity is severely limited, meaning he can only ever cast mid-ranked spells. The group is surprised that the creator of such overpowered original magic is restricted to lower-tier spells, but Rain quickly cheers him up, praising his hard work and expressing hope that he will unlock higher-ranked magic someday. Selma then mentions that Unit 1 actually has 3 members with their own special abilities, suggesting they head into the Great Dungeon tomorrow to practice fighting together. Everyone agrees to the training exercise, and Lucretia excitedly proposes throwing a welcome party for Orhun first. However, Orhun awkwardly scratches his head and admits he cannot join them because he lost his weapon during the Black Dragon fight and needs to go buy a new off-the-shelf sword before they enter the dungeon. The entire party is completely horrified by the idea of their newest star member relying on a generic store-bought weapon. Refusing to let him embarrass the clan, Rain and the others immediately drag Orhun to the clan's dedicated blacksmith, a man named Aaron. Aaron is honored to forge a custom sword for the legendary Dragon Slayer, but he quickly runs into a problem. He explains that a weapon meant for the deepest levels of the dungeon requires incredibly rare materials, and his current stock is completely empty. He asks the group to venture down and gather the materials first, but Will points out how ridiculous it is to enter the dungeon without a weapon just to get materials for a weapon. Fortunately, Orhun steps up and reveals he actually kept a massive personal stash of deep floor materials from his time in the Heroes Party. He empties his inventory onto a table, astonishing everyone with the sheer volume of priceless monster parts, including griffin claws and manticore fangs. The entire group stares in pure awe at the pile of rare loot, realizing Orhun basically hoarded an entire fortune. As the group marvels at the treasure, Orhun pulls out a massive, jagged black scale and explains he harvested it from the Black Dragon he recently defeated. A sudden heavy silence falls over the room. Orhun notices the pained expressions on his new friends' faces and realizes he just brought out a piece of the very monster that slaughtered their old teammate, Albert. He feels terrible for carelessly opening their old wounds and quickly apologizes. Despite her obvious grief, Rain forces a bright smile and enthusiastically declares that a Black Dragon scale will create the strongest sword in existence. Orhun realizes she is hiding her sadness just to make him feel welcome, and he deeply appreciates her kindness. Aaron confirms the dragon scale will serve as the perfect main ingredient for the new blade. Wanting to make sure his new weapon turns out flawlessly, Orhun decides to postpone his welcome party entirely so he can stay behind and carefully discuss the design details with the blacksmith. The next day, Orhun gathers with Unit 1 in a meeting room to discuss their immediate plans. Selma informs the group that the Adventure Management Division has officially requested them to collect noxious sheep pelts, so they will be heading down to floor 86 to complete the mission while simultaneously practicing their teamwork with their newest member. Will is incredibly excited and vows to make sure they all eventually reach floor 94 so they can finally stand on par with the famous Heroes Party. Soon after, the 5 adventurers arrive on the 86th floor, which surprisingly features a vast, lush green field under a bright blue sky rather than the usual dark caves found on the upper levels. Selma quickly goes over their combat strategy, assigning Will the crucial job of keeping the monster's attention while Rain attacks from the rear with her powerful magic. She instructs Lucra to join the offensive but reminds her to keep healing magic ready just in case things go wrong. Selma herself plans to stay back to cast buffs and issue commands, leaving Orhun to take the front line as their primary attacker. Orhun casually mentions that he could probably just defeat all the monsters by himself and offers to fight alone so he doesn't end up slowing the rest of the team down. However, Selma firmly insists that he stay integrated with the group, pointing out that they will never learn how to properly work alongside him if he just runs off on his own. Just as they finalize their plan, Selma senses danger and loudly shouts a warning. A massive, glowing red fireball suddenly hurtles toward them out of nowhere, forcing the entire party to sprint across the grassy field and leap out of the way to avoid the explosive blast. Orhun quickly identifies the attacker as an earth dragon but realizes the beast is completely hidden from view. Stepping up to the challenge, Lucre confidently announces that she can use her special magic tracking ability to locate the invisible foe by following the lingering traces of its magic. She closes her eyes, concentrates her energy, and unleashes a sweeping, translucent energy dome across the landscape. In an instant, she spots the glowing silhouette of the beast hiding in the distant forest and points her ornate staff toward it. She fires a concentrated green magical blast that erupts into a fiery red explosion upon impact, successfully forcing a large, brown-horned earth dragon out of hiding. Seeing the monster reveal itself, Will excitedly declares that it is his turn to shine, and charges forward with his large red double-bladed spear. The earth dragon roars and unleashes another massive blast of fire, but Will expertly jumps into the air, completely deflecting the flames with his spinning weapon. He effortlessly leaps over the creature's head and delivers a brutal kick right into its open mouth, leaving it stunned and vulnerable. Seizing the perfect opportunity, Rain steps forward and casts her special rank spell, Explode. A giant white star-shaped magical seal materializes in the sky, instantly engulfing the earth dragon in a devastating explosion of yellow fire and brown smoke. Orhun is genuinely amazed by how quickly and efficiently the party took down the monster. He openly praises Will for his incredibly rare ability to completely cancel out enemy attacks with a double-bladed spear rather than just blocking them. He also commends Rain for constructing a highly complex special rank spell in half the time it would take a normal caster, and he highlights how absolutely indispensable Luker's tracking ability is for any successful dungeon dive. Finally, he praises Selma's excellent leadership for perfectly tying all their unique skills together into one cohesive unit. Hearing his kind words, Selma blushes deeply, but their celebration is quickly cut short when two more massive earth dragons suddenly appear on the horizon, roaring aggressively at the party. Will and Orhun immediately charge across the field to intercept the new threats, but before they can reach them, a sharp rock arrow strikes the ground right in front of the girls. A giant, rock-covered hiding turtle materializes from a magical outline, effectively trapping the party between the heavily armored turtle and the two charging dragons. Unfazed by the ambush, Selma rapidly issues new orders, commanding Rain and Luker to handle the slow-moving turtle, while instructing Will and Orhun to focus entirely on taking down the earth dragons without worrying about their rearguard. Orhun is deeply impressed by her lightning-fast decision-making and her ability to remain calm under pressure. As the two horned dragons sprint across the grass, Will leaps into the air and swings his polearm to intercept them. At that exact moment, Orhun hears Selma's voice directly in his head. She reveals that her special ability is telepathy, allowing her to communicate with her team from a distance and coordinate complex strategies in absolute secrecy. Orhun is ecstatic, noting that telepathy is the exact skill he desperately wanted the most back when he was fighting alongside the heroes' party. Selma blushes at the high praise, but quickly refocuses, ordering Orhun to flank the dragons and target their blind spots while casting whatever buffs he deems necessary. Following her command, Orhun summons a glowing green magic circle and casts Strength Up, Tactical Up, and Sharpness Up, heavily enhancing his silver sword. As Will expertly spins his spear to keep the two giant reptiles distracted, Selma initiates a 5-second countdown through their telepathic link. The moment she gives the signal, Orhun unleashes his devastating impact spell. He swings his sword downward, generating a blindingly bright white flash that completely engulfs the two earth dragons, instantly blasting them away and disintegrating their bodies into dark purple energy. Simultaneously, Rain summons a massive thunderstorm with her Mjolnir spell, striking the hiding turtle with brutal lightning bolts, while Luker follows up by casting Ice Javelin to freeze and shatter the beast's rocky shell. A massive golden explosion consumes the turtle, completely wiping it out. With the battlefield finally clear, the team regroups and shares a celebratory fist bump. They successfully gather the required 9 noxious sheep pelts and prepare to head home. Orhun smiles warmly and admits that fighting alongside them was incredibly easy, noting that he had almost forgotten how much fun it could be to genuinely rely on a cohesive party. Luker and Rain are still in absolute awe of his overwhelming power, completely shocked that he managed to slice clean through 2 heavily armored earth dragons with a single, effortless strike. Taking a moment to reflect on their performance, Selma turns to Orhun and seriously asks if he believes Unit 1 is finally ready to venture down to Floor 92 now that he is with them. Orhun shakes his head and confidently states that they are strong enough to defeat the Black Dragon even without his help. He explains that he can clearly see how incredibly hard they have trained over the past year since losing Albert, and their current strength is more than enough to achieve victory. Hearing this ultimate validation from a legendary Dragonslayer brings Rain and Luker to tears of joy, finally proving that all their grueling efforts were not in vain. However, Selma remains cautious, reminding everyone just how terrifyingly powerful the Black Dragon truly is and recalling the sheer destruction it caused during their teaching expedition. She earnestly begs Orhun to fight alongside them, admitting that they still desperately need his help because she refuses to lose any more comrades. Orhun gladly accepts her request, swearing to protect his new friends to the bitter end no matter what happens. With their mission complete, the group heads back to the surface, and Selma asks Orhun to accompany her to the Adventure Management Division the next morning to file their official success report. That evening, the party gathers at the Night Sky Silver Rabbit's Tavern to throw a massive welcome celebration for Orhun. They sit around a long wooden table loaded with delicious food and eagerly toast to their new teammate with large wooden mugs of alcohol. Orhun expresses his deep gratitude for their warm welcome, reiterating how much he genuinely enjoyed exploring the dungeon with them. Lucre and Rain completely break down, tearfully confessing that they were actually terrified of working with him at first. They explain that they were extremely nervous about fighting alongside a famous dragon slayer and constantly worried that their rearguard support would end up slowing him down. Will laughs at their dramatic confessions and points out that Selma was definitely the most nervous person in the entire group. He teasingly notes that she had taken a massive personal interest in Orhun from the very beginning, which is why she was so incredibly tense during the dive. Selma blushes furiously and stammers out a weak defense, claiming she just wanted to make sure he felt comfortable settling into the clan as quickly as possible. The girls completely ignore her excuses and continue to tease her for being overly interested in their new male companion. Thoroughly embarrassed and desperate to escape the spotlight, Selma aggressively chugs her entire mug of alcohol in one go. The strong drink hits her almost immediately, leaving her completely dazed, flushed, and highly intoxicated. She stumbles over to Orhun, heavily leans her head against his shoulder, and gently places her hand on his chest. Staring up at him with half-open eyes surrounded by imaginary pink bubbles, she dreamily slurs about how incredibly handsome he is. Orhun is completely caught off guard by the sudden physical contact and immediately starts panicking, completely unsure of how to handle the situation. He frantically tries to pull away, but Selma firmly refuses to let him go, boldly declaring that she has been waiting for this exact moment for a very long time and fully intends to keep him trapped by her side until morning. Desperate for an escape, Orhun begs Rain and Lucre to pull their intoxicated leader away. However, instead of helping him, Rain decides it looks like fun and completely wraps herself around his other arm, while Lucre cheers them on from the sidelines. Will simply sits back in his chair with a smug grin, thoroughly enjoying the chaotic spectacle and explicitly refusing to intervene, joking that Orhun is the star of the show and just has to deal with his newfound popularity. Completely overwhelmed by the girl's aggressive affection and blushing so hard his face feels like it might catch fire, Orhun realizes he has absolutely no conventional way out of this mess. Left with no other viable options, he quietly activates his induced sleep spell. A soft magical aura washes over the girls, instantly knocking both Selma and Rain completely unconscious. As they slump heavily onto his shoulders, Orhun lets out a massive sigh of relief, though he softly admits to himself that he really did have a wonderful time tonight. Several hours later, Orhun carefully carries the deeply sleeping Selma on his back through the quiet streets and arrives at her home. He gently knocks on the front door, hoping someone is still awake to take her inside. Inside the house, Selma's younger sister Sophia is pacing around in her light pink nightgown, extremely worried about why her older sister is out so late. When she hears a boy's voice apologizing for the late hour from the other side of the door, she instantly becomes incredibly flustered, wildly wondering if Orhun somehow came all this way just to see her in the middle of the night. She frantically tries to compose herself and pulls open the door, only to be completely shocked by the sight of Orhun casually giving her unconscious older sister a piggyback ride. She points an accusing finger at them and immediately demands to know exactly what kind of scandalous relationship they have secretly developed. Orhun nervously waves his hands and desperately tries to clear up the massive misunderstanding, explaining that there is absolutely nothing romantic going on between them. He clarifies that Selma simply drank way too much alcohol at his welcome party, completely passed out, and he was just doing his duty as a teammate by carrying her home safely. Sophia listens to his explanation and slowly accepts it, but she quietly notes that Selma almost never gets this severely drunk. She realizes that her sister must have had an incredibly fun and completely stress-free time with her new party members. She attributes Selma's sudden burst of happiness entirely to Orhun's arrival, softly thanking him in her heart before helping him bring her sister inside. Shortly after Orhun leaves, the effects of the sleep spell wear off, and Selma slowly wakes up in her bed. Sophia immediately starts scolding her for drinking so heavily and being such a massive burden on Orhun. Selma is utterly mortified by her own behavior. She sits on the edge of her bed, bowing her head in deep shame, and apologizes profusely for embarrassing herself so badly. Seeing how genuinely terrible her sister feels, Sophia lets out a soft sigh and immediately forgives her. She warmly acknowledges that Selma has been dealing with an immense amount of pressure and stress as the leader of Unit 1 lately, and she is just happy that her sister finally found an opportunity to let her guard down and truly relax now that Orhun is around to share the heavy burden. Sophia simply asks her to be a bit more careful from now on, so she doesn't accidentally cause trouble for other people. Selma is completely overwhelmed by her little sister's boundless kindness and deep understanding. She looks at Sophia and literally imagines her as a beautiful angel floating in the clouds with giant white wings. Moved to absolute tears by the wholesome moment, Selma jumps forward and starts crying tears of joy, loudly declaring how incredibly lucky she is to have such a pure and perfect angelic sister. Sophia just rolls her eyes and laughs, telling Selma that she is being completely dramatic and exaggerating the situation. The following morning, Selma steps into a hot, steamy shower to wash off the lingering effects of the alcohol. As the warm water cascades over her, she takes a quiet moment to deeply reflect on the highly embarrassing events of the previous night. She is completely mortified by the realization that Orhun had to physically carry her all the way home, and she feels terrible for acting so foolishly right in front of Sophia. She firmly decides that she needs to be much more careful with her behavior from now on, specifically so she doesn't accidentally give Sophia any wrong ideas about her relationship with Orhun. Selma thinks to herself that as a good and supportive older sister, she should be doing everything in her power to encourage Sophia's apparent first crush on the handsome dragon slayer rather than getting in the way. However, despite her noble intentions, Selma's thoughts inevitably drift back to her own confusing emotions. She vividly remembers leaning against Orhun's chest, staring into his eyes and openly calling him a handsome man. She quickly tries to rationalize the memory, desperately trying to convince herself that she only likes him as a good person and deeply respects him as a highly skilled adventurer. She firmly tells herself that there is absolutely nothing romantic about her feelings and that she is just happy to have a reliable new teammate. But as she stands alone in the thick steam, staring blankly at the beige-tiled wall, she struggles to fully believe her own excuses, completely unable to shake the lingering warmth she felt when she was in his arms. Later that day, Selma meets up with Orhun so they can head to the Adventure Management Division together. Still feeling incredibly guilty, she awkwardly apologizes to him once again for her completely unhinged, drunken behavior the night before. Orhun simply flashes a warm smile and tells her not to worry about it at all. He casually dismisses the entire incident, reassuring her that it was actually quite funny, and suggests they just completely forget about the embarrassing moment so they can focus all their energy on their bright future together as a unified team. Orhun sits alone in his dimly lit room at a wooden desk, carefully reviewing the confidential personnel files for the newest members of his squad, Sophia, Logan, and Caroline. He notes that all three of the young recruits have incredibly bitter and tragic pasts, but Caroline's history is especially dark and troubling. After finishing his review, Orhun heads over to the guild's massive library to meet with Selma and Estella. Estella is sitting at her usually messy desk, which is surprisingly tidy today, alongside a woman named Carla. Carla introduces herself as a member of the Exploration Management Department who acts as a caretaker for all the rookie explorers. Both Carla and Estella are extremely relieved to hear that Orhun has officially agreed to take charge of the 10th Squad's training. Orhun confirms he has read their files and already formulated a proper plan on how to handle them. Carla happily leaves the rest of the responsibility to him. Orhun then asks Estella for the official teaching materials or training guidelines, but Estella cheerfully reveals that there are absolutely no manuals for him to use. She expects Orhun to train the kids using his own personal experience and simply give them whatever they need to survive. Orhun is slightly confused by this completely open-ended task, so Selma steps in and suggests they should at least set a concrete goal for the rookie. Estella completely agrees and sets a massive expectation, declaring that she wants the three rookies to be strong enough to conquer the middle floors of the dangerous dungeon entirely by themselves in just 6 months. Selma thinks this is a ridiculously high goal for beginners, but Estella believes strongly in their potential since they grew so much during their previous instructional expedition. Orhun accepts the tough challenge without hesitation. Later, Orhun and Selma walk together down a long hallway lined with stone pillars. Selma brings up the confidential files Orhun read and asks if he understands her complicated relationship with her half-sister Sophia. Orhun admits he was pretty surprised by the hidden details. Selma explains that her father had an affair with a household servant, who tragically passed away shortly after giving birth to Sophia. The wealthy Claudel family took the young girl in, but because she was an illegitimate child, they treated her horribly and abused her. Selma tried her absolute best to protect her little sister from the mistreatment. The very first time Selma returned home after becoming an independent explorer, she found Sophia sitting alone in a dark room and immediately asked if she wanted to leave that awful place with her. Selma wants Sophia to become a fine, independent explorer so she never has to rely on their toxic family again. She worries Orun might think she is just playing favorites with her sibling, but Orun completely understands the situation and promises to look after her sister. Orun then heads into a brightly lit room to officially meet his 3 new students. Caroline, Logan, and Sophia are waiting for him and greet him with massive excitement. They know he is there to take them on as his disciples. Orun clarifies that it is technically formal clan training, but he will gladly act as their master. The kids are incredibly thrilled because Orun is famous for being incredibly strong and knowledgeable. They praise him for completely overwhelming the terrifying Black Dragon recently, but Orun stays humble. He admits it was actually a very close call and tells the trio that the Black Dragon is a powerful enemy they must aim to defeat themselves someday if they want to conquer the Great Dungeon. The kids are shocked at the idea of fighting such a monstrous beast, but Orun assures them they have tremendous potential and can become fine explorers if they work hard. They all eagerly agree to give it their best effort. Before starting the physical training, Orun tells them to keep 2 very important rules in mind at all times. First, they must always keep thinking and find creative ways to solve problems outside the box. Second, they must never blindly trust that everything he says is absolutely correct. He explains that he is not perfect and makes mistakes, so they need to process his advice and turn it into their own unique knowledge, rather than just swallowing his words whole. He encourages them to ask questions if they ever feel doubtful. The recruits agree to his terms. Next, Orun asks each of them why they decided to become explorers in the first place. Sophia goes first and explains that she wants to be just like her older sister Selma. She deeply admires how Selma lives freely and chooses her own path. Sophia admits she does not actually know what she wants to do with her life yet, so she became an explorer to figure out her own dreams and goals. Orun thinks this is a great reason and promises to fully support her journey. Logan goes next and proudly declares that he wants to earn a massive amount of money. Sophia is surprised by this blunt answer, but Logan explains that he grew up in a severely impoverished village with barren land where people constantly starved. The poor villagers pooled together all their meager savings just to send him to the city so he could have a better life. Logan wants to become a successful explorer so he can repay everyone back home. He admits he used to think he was already quite strong, but seeing the Black Dragon made him realize how incredibly weak he truly is. He desperately bows and begs Orun to teach him everything he needs to know to gain more power. Orun accepts his plea but reminds him that mastering the skills will depend entirely on his own hard work. Finally, it is Caroline's turn. She cheerfully states that she does not have a particular reason for becoming an explorer other than getting the chance to kill monsters. She explains that she loves seeing people smile, and because monsters make people lose their smiles, she kills them. She casually adds that when people are smiling, they do not hurt her. Orun instantly realizes how deeply traumatized she is by her past. He validates her feelings, agreeing that everyone's smiles are important, and thanks her for sharing. Having heard their reasons, Orun urges them to never forget their origins. Caroline then asks Orun if he has a dream of his own. Orun gets serious and tells them that no matter how unreasonable the world gets, he never wants to lose anything ever again. He wants to be strong enough to protect everything that matters to him, which is why he refuses to stay weak and plans to keep getting stronger alongside them. He promises to take their training entirely seriously and demands they come at him with everything they have. The trio agrees enthusiastically. Orun then decides that calling out their full names during a frantic battle will take too long and put them in danger. He turns to Caroline and suggests calling her Carol to make things easier. She absolutely loves the idea and gets super excited. Seeing this, Logan desperately begs for a nickname too. Orun thinks for a second and just chops his name down to Log. Logan is incredibly thrilled and acts like it is the greatest honor in the world. Orun then looks at Sophia and gives her the nickname Sophie. She blushes and happily accepts it. With their new names settled, Log and Carol decide they are going to call Orun their master from now on, though Sophie decides she will just keep calling him Orun. They immediately head out to a dark, rocky cavern to begin their combat training. Carol rushes forward to fight a group of large white wolves on her own. She wields 2 daggers, but fights incredibly recklessly. She intentionally leaves herself completely open to the wolves' attacks just so she can get close enough to land a finishing blow. Orun watches her take hits and notes that her fighting style is an absolute disaster. She is failing as a defender because she is not properly drawing the enemy in, and she is failing as an attacker by taking massive unnecessary risks. As another wolf lunges at her blind spot, Orun instantly casts a reflective wall barrier to trap the monster. He then casts an agility buff on himself, dashes forward at lightning speed, and completely decapitates the massive wolf with a single strike of his sword. He turns to Carol and scolds her for ignoring her surroundings and leaving herself completely defenseless. Carol casually explains that she knew the monster was behind her, but she left herself open on purpose. Orin is totally confused and points out she could have been badly injured. In response, Carol pulls out a sharp silver dagger and casually slices her own wrist open, letting the blood drip onto the stone floor. Orin completely panics and grabs her arm, but the deep wound instantly heals right before his eyes. Carol cheerfully reveals her superpower, explaining that she possesses an immortal body. No matter how badly she gets hurt, she heals immediately, and she proudly claims that she is completely used to the pain, so Orin does not need to worry. Orin reflects on the tragic files he read earlier. Carol was held captive by the evil Cyclamen cult for several years. The cult is a massive criminal syndicate that performs human experiments, traffics people, and worships an evil god. Because of her healing abilities, the cult tortured and experimented on her relentlessly until their base was destroyed and she was finally rescued by a man named Albert. However, Albert recently died, leaving a massive unhealable wound in her heart. Orin realizes he has to fix her reckless mindset immediately. He tells Carol to turn around and look at Log and Sophie. Both of her friends look absolutely horrified and deeply concerned. Orin explains that while her physical wounds might heal instantly, the pain still exists. More importantly, because Log and Sophie care about her, seeing her get hurt causes them immense emotional pain, which completely erases their smiles. He asks Carol if she is truly okay with taking away her friend's smiles just to land a hit. The realization hits Carol like a truck. She realizes her reckless actions are causing the exact thing she hates the most. Overwhelmed with guilt and fear, she screams that she hates making them sad and drops her daggers on the ground. She begins to sob uncontrollably, grabbing her head and begging Orin not to hit her, clearly flashing back to her days of being violently tortured. Orin approaches her gently and pats her on the head. He hugs the crying girl and softly reassures her that no one in this group will ever lay a hand on her. He promises that if anyone ever tries to hurt her again, he will knock them out himself. He tells her she is finally safe. Log and Sophie watch the touching moment, feeling incredibly grateful for their master's kindness. Following this emotional breakthrough, Orin completely changes Carol's training regimen. Back in a wood panel training hall, Orin launches fast-moving white spherical projectiles at Carol from multiple magical circles. Carol desperately tries to dodge them but gets hit repeatedly, stumbling and falling to the floor. She angrily complains that it is too hard to dodge when she cannot tell where the attacks are coming from. Orin firmly reminds her that if she wants to protect everyone's smiles, she needs to learn how to properly protect herself first without relying on her immortality. Carol calls him a demon but gets back up and continues trying to dodge the barrage of painful training balls. Meanwhile, Log is training with a heavy spear. He swings it with great effort, and Orin praises his solid form. Log asks why Orin assigned him a spear instead of a sword. Orin explains that a spear allows Log to keep a safe distance from enemies, which perfectly complements his role as an enchanter. He mentions that another clan member named Will is actually a master with the spear, and promises to have him properly instruct Log in the future, which makes Log incredibly excited. Next, Orin focuses on Sophie's magical training. He sets up several targets numbered with Roman numerals. He makes Sophie repeatedly subtract the number 7 from 500 out loud while simultaneously maintaining 2 massive glowing magic circles for fire and water spells. While she is doing the math, Orin randomly calls out a color, and she has to instantly fire the correct elemental spell at the correct target. This brutal parallel construction training totally overwhelms Sophie. She panics, loses her focus, and messes up the spells. Orin warns her that freezing up in a real battle will get her teammates killed. As they practice, Sophie suddenly tells Orin that she felt a very strange sensation. She reached out her hand without casting anything, and one of the heavy stone targets inexplicably fell over. Orin instantly recognizes this phenomenon. He felt the exact same way right before his own superpower manifested. Considering Selma has a powerful telepathy superpower, Orin strongly suspects Sophie might be awakening a unique power of her own. However, he advises her not to rush things and to take her time figuring out what the strange feeling is so she does not lose control. After a grueling day of training, the girls head to the guild's massive indoor bathhouse to relax their aching muscles. Sophie and Carol soak in the steamy water and complain about how much of a demon Orin is during practice. Carla and Estella happen to be in the bath as well and warmly praise the girls for improving so much. However, Sophie looks down at her own chest and starts feeling incredibly insecure because she is much smaller than the older women. Carol laughs and tries to cheer her up, insisting that they are still in their growth phase and will definitely get bigger soon. After a long period of relentless training, the group gathers back in the hall. Carol effortlessly dodges all the incoming projectiles. Log perfectly parries rapid attacks with his spear. Sophie flawlessly casts multiple spells at once and destroys the targets. Orun proudly announces that their hard work has finally paid off. He reminds them that just yesterday, they successfully ventured down to the 20th floor of the dungeon and defeated the floor boss, the Orc Lord, completely on their own without his help. The kids cheer wildly, thrilled to have cleared the first major stage of their training. Orun encourages them to keep pushing forward and aim even higher. Later, Orun visits a local weapon shop run by a muscular man. The shopkeeper presents Orun with a brand new, sleek black sword entirely forged from the scales of the black dragon they defeated. Orun takes the weapon and is absolutely amazed by the flawless balance and the perfect grip. Log and Sophie look on in total awe at the legendary weapon. Holding the powerful new blade in his hands, Orun makes a solemn vow to himself. He swears upon the black sword that no matter what dangerous situations lie ahead, he will always protect his comrades.